Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfroPedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfroPedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfroPedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfroPedia.com.
All I do is work to get more loose leaf. I ain't slept in 2 weeks. Woman of my dreams, I don't sleep so I can't find her. So please, miss me with that conscious shit. I spent many a sleepless night because of it. I never sleep.
Professor Cote, what did this study tell us about sleeping in on the weekend?
Well, it was a very interesting study from Sweden, and they looked at over 40,000 people and followed them for 13 years. And they asked them how long they slept during the week and on weekends. And then they were looking to see if there was a relationship between sleep duration and mortality, or the risk of dying. And it's an interesting research question. It's been asked before in many countries around the world. These results have been replicated where we see that really short sleepers, people who are sleeping less than 5 hours a night consistently every night of the week, those short sleepers, as well as really long sleepers, people who consistently sleep more than 9 hours a night every day of the week, those short and long sleepers both have an increased risk of mortality or early death. So that finding has been established well in various countries. And what was unique about the study from Sweden is that they asked people about their sleep time during the week versus the weekend, or work time versus time off, because we know that people do sleep longer on weekends when they have an opportunity. And so that was a good approach, because what they found was that there was this unique group of people, the people who sleep restricted during the week, getting less than 5 hours a night during the work week, but then they compensated by sleeping more on weekends. And if they slept more on weekends, they didn't have that increased rate of mortality. So the authors suggest, this is very preliminary, but it does suggest that for that sleep-restricted group, there might be some benefit to sleeping in on the weekend.
Well, what did you make of these results?
Again, it's a very interesting study, but I think that it's still a very open question, and there's still a lot to look at. So this is an epidemiological study where they just look at the relationship between sleep duration and mortality, and they account for a number of other things that would obviously relate to mortality, like smoking status and health status and so forth. So it's a solid research design in terms of epidemiological approach, and it allows you to look at a large number of people. That's the benefit. But it's not an experiment. So we can never really know what's causing that relationship, if there's something else going on that is related to sleep and mortality that explains the relationship. So more research is needed to fully understand that. As well, they only asked about your sleep time on that one occasion, that one day they filled out the questionnaire. So we don't know if this pattern, if these people that sleep restricted during the week and slept in on weekends, we don't know if that was a consistent pattern for them over the 13 years. So there's more research that could follow up on that.
What should people take from this study, if anything?
That's a good question. I don't think there's an inconsistent message here. I think the message is the same. So for those who think, wait a minute, haven't I been told that I'm supposed to get a good amount of sleep every night of the week and be consistent? Well, yes, that's still the message. In an ideal situation, the best thing for your health and well-being is to get the sleep you need, and for adults, that's between 7 and 9 hours. So find out what is your sleep number, how much do you need, and then consistently get that. Now, sleeping in on the weekend, there's nothing wrong with that. It feels great. If you have the opportunity to do it, it's great. This study does suggest that, for people who are sleep restricted, and this will especially apply for certain groups of people, like shift workers, that where they might need to split their sleep, they might need to nap, they might need to sleep more on weekends. There could be some long-term benefits to that. All this study looked at was mortality, so it didn't look at health consequences. So this group of people who are sleep restricting and then extending on the weekend, they might still have some negative health consequences from that. That hasn't been assessed. As well, I think an important thing for people to remember is that when you cut down on your sleep for even one night, there's negative consequences the next day for your well-being and your performance. So even that 1 hour time change in the spring is enough that we see increased auto accidents around the world. So it's not a good idea to restrict your sleep. There are consequences for your safety and your performance and your functioning. So no one should take this and plan to restrict their sleep because they can make up on weekends, because that wouldn't be the way to interpret it.
Well, I was going to ask you in general, how seriously should people take the whole issue of sleep?
Oh, well, for me, I'm convinced, and I wish everyone else understood how important sleep was for our well-being. I think a good way to think about it is that sleep is as important for your health as diet and exercise. It seems to be the thing that people don't take as serious. Many cultures around the world think that sleep is a luxury, and that if you're sleeping in or sleeping at the job, that you're lazy, that you're unproductive. And that's really an unfortunate way to look at things, because we should think of sleep as a performance enhancer. We should think that, I want to sleep better than you because then I'm going to be functioning better to become a high-performance athlete or the top of my profession. So sleep is powerful. It's needed for the totality of your well-being, and everyone should make it a priority.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
So like I was saying, I've always believed that Cosbiness is next to godliness.
I wanted to bring Lily Bernard into this conversation. Lily, you're an actor. You're a visual artist. You accused Bill Cosby of drugging and raping you in the 90s. Bill Cosby was just convicted of 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault in another case. Can you talk about your reaction to the news about Harvey Weinstein being arrested on charge of sexual assault and rape in the 1st and 3rd degree, and then your response to what happened to Bill Cosby in court, his conviction?
Sure. Well, if you'll indulge me in speaking through the lens of black womanhood, because black women's lives matter too, what this Harvey Weinstein indictment has done for me personally is that it's taken me right back to 1492 when rape was the linchpin of colonization and the slavery that sustained the colonization. And Bell Hooks wrote that black women are programmed historically to be the sexual latrines of both powerful white men and disempowered black men. And this is critically important because from a cultural perspective, it's actually against the status quo for black women to speak out publicly against their rapist, particularly when the rapist is a beloved, iconic, black, powerful father figure such as Bill Cosby. Now, more than a third of us Cosby accusers are black women. 26 of us are black women. And this has come with great burden because since the Cosby verdict, the vitriol that I and my sisters have been receiving from black adoring, diehard Cosby fans and rape apologists, I'm sorry to say the majority of whom are black men, has increased tenfold. And this vitriol is fueled by Bill Cosby's impudence in paralleling himself to the lynched child Emmett Till and into his audacity in likening us to modern-day lynch mobs, to likening us to really white supremacist thugs who target and murder innocent children, women, and men. And this is important. What Harvey Weinstein's indictment does for me personally is that it actually quiets these black men who are attacking me, and it redirects the focus to what the real problem is. And the real problem is a rape problem. It's not a race problem. And Hollywood has perpetuated that rape problem by creating this version of femininity that is like, you know, the damsel in distress, the sex pot, and women are subjected to that. And this disempowered form of feminism infects all corners of Hollywood. And what Hollywood actually is this, it's like an amplified mirror of these centuries of the disempowerment of women, of centuries of the objectification of women. And so what we as actors have to do in the industry is that we have to navigate these perilous parameters while powerful men like Cosby and Weinstein exploit this and hide behind their pockets and are met with impunity because of the silencing culture of rape. And whereas it is empowering for victims to speak out and for actors to break that amplified mirror, you run the risk of being met with cuts. Being cut. And this re-victimization of the brave victim who will speak out can only be really changed and dealt with once we ratify the ERA and protect the rights of women under the Constitution.
Lily Bernard, can you talk about what happened to you, what you say Bill Cosby did to you in the 90s? You were an actress?
Yes, I was. I was an actress, and I was doing quite well when I met Bill Cosby, and he groomed me like he groomed a lot of women. He endeared himself to my family. He met my father, invited my father to the studio, spoke with my mother on the phone, invited the grandfather of my boyfriend at the time, who's been my husband, to the studios, my cousins to the studios. So he ingratiated himself to the family. He praised me to people to whom he introduced me, and I looked upon him as a father figure. And then once he gained my total trust, he drugged me and he raped me, and he did this during the mentoring process. And, the word gaslighting was mentioned, and he did gaslight me prior to the drugging and the sexual assault he would put me through these exercises, and during one of these theater exercises, he came around behind me and he grabbed my breast. And I gasped, and I turned around really quickly, and in disdain, I said, "Mr. C, you grabbed my breast." He's like, "No, I didn't." I said, "Yes, you did. You grabbed my breast." He said, "No, I didn't." I said, "You grabbed my breast, Mr. C." And so when he saw that I was displeased, he said, "No, I didn't. I was trying to grab your rib cage. I was trying to show you to, lift up your rib cage and project through your diaphragm." And so this caused me to doubt myself. But so there's this very calculating, masterful manipulation of the mind that Bill Cosby, enacted in order to subdue dozens and dozens of women to the point of being able to drug and rape.
I wanted to go back also to Harvey Weinstein. This is from Vulture. Dozens of women have accused Weinstein of various forms of harassment and abuse over the past few months, with Weinstein only directly issuing statements of denial about Salma Hayek's and Lupita Nyong'o's claims in a new interview with Variety. Hayek believes it's because they're not white. She said, "We're the easiest to get discredited. It's well-known fact. So we went back attacking the two women of color in hopes that if he could discredit us, now is the time for action." This is the second time Hayek has discussed her Weinstein experience. She also revealed earlier this year how she felt ashamed about waiting so long to tell her story because she said, "It felt like my pain was so small compared to all the other stories." I wanted to bring Louise Godbold back into the conversation. Your response to hearing what Salma Hayek and Lupita Nyong'o also described as their experiences with Harvey Weinstein, his assaults on them.
Well, obviously, anyone who's been through that experience, my heart goes out to them. But to feel that you also now have to represent the token Latino or the token African American must be doubly damaging. As it is, you're objectified. When you're sexually assaulted, you're objectified. And the abuser is not really connecting with who you are as a human being. So I don't know. Either these beautiful ladies, but I imagine that it's just adding insult to injury. It's just mind-boggling. But going back to what I was saying before, that acknowledgement that something has happened is so important, because otherwise you are made to feel like you're crazy. And part of healing from trauma is being able to construct a coherent narrative. And if you're being told at every turn, that never happened, I never did that, you do begin to think that you're going crazy.
And as for drugs, well, drugs are bad. You shouldn't do drugs.
The opioid crisis has gone underwater. Scientists have found traces of oxycodone in shellfish near Bremerton and in Seattle's Elliott Bay. It's just one of hundreds of pharmaceuticals that native mussels have absorbed from the waters of Puget Sound. KUOW's John Ryan reports.
If you take legal or illegal drugs, or even flush them down the toilet unused, there's a good chance they'll wind up in Puget Sound. Jennifer Langsbury is a biologist with the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Oxycodone is in the news right now, but there are a number of other pharmaceutical products that we found, the antibiotics, the antidepressants, chemotherapy drugs, heart medications that we're finding in mussels. And a lot of those we find in juvenile Chinook salmon as well.
Shellfish don't have livers, so they can't metabolize our drugs, but salmon do, and their ability to grow and their immune systems are getting messed up as a result.
I wonder, your work, does it make you want to not eat shellfish?
No, not at all. I think I would avoid eating shellfish from urban locations. But, there are plenty of places in Puget Sound where we're finding, almost nothing in terms of those products, and I would feel comfortable eating mussels from there.
A federal study has estimated that close to 300 pounds of pharmaceuticals and personal care products enter the waters of Puget Sound each day. Langsbury says the doses of oxycodone found in the mussels were very low, too low to get you high if you did eat those shellfish. In Seattle, I'm John Ryan, KUOW News.
The stage is set for the highly anticipated royal wedding of Prince Harry and American actress Meghan Markle this Saturday. Their union marks another step toward the modernization of the monarchy. Markle is also biracial, tracing her roots to a black mother and white father.
I'd like to bring in Gabrielle Bruni, editor for Esquire based in Brooklyn. You recently wrote a piece for Esquire titled "The Royal Wedding Celebrated the Contributions of Black Britons, but it comes amid a scandal rooted in the British government's mistreatment of Caribbean peoples." What is that scandal?
Well, that would be the Windrush scandal, which boils down to the government treating British Caribbeans who are in the country legally, legal citizens, as if they were illegal immigrants. And in the UK at the moment, treating someone as if they're an illegal immigrant means treating them very harshly, depriving them of housing, their job potentially, and perhaps even deporting them.
And why is it called the Windrush generation?
Well, it's named that for the boat that carried the first group of this generation of Caribbean people to the UK. The boat was called the Empire Windrush.
And this migration started when? Can you give us a little bit of the history of it?
Sure. Well, the Empire Windrush docked in the UK in 1948. To give an idea of the extent to which that these people were part of the British Empire, were British subjects, the Evening Standard from 1948, with a picture of the ship on it, it said "Welcome Home." That was the headline. So it was a real sense that these are people are part of our country, and the wave of migration continued until about 1971.
With labor very much needed and wanted and encouraged by the British government.
Yeah, they were augmenting the post-World War II workforce. They were actually invited. So not only were they already British citizens, they were invited to come to the motherland.
Let's go to British Labour MP David Lammy last month, blasting former Home Secretary Amber Rudd in the House of Commons about the Windrush scandal.
The relationship between this country and the West Indies and Caribbean is inextricable. The first British ships arrived in the Caribbean in 1623, and despite slavery, despite colonization, 25,000 Caribbeans served in the First World War and Second World War alongside British troops. When my parents and their generation arrived in this country under the Nationality Act of 1948, they arrived here as British citizens. It is inhumane and cruel for so many of that Windrush generation to have suffered so long in this condition, and for the Secretary of State only to have made a statement today on this issue? Can she explain how many have been deported? She suggested earlier that she would ask the High Commissioners. It is her department that has deported them. She should know the number. Can she tell the House how many have been detained as prisoners in their own country? Can she tell the House how many have been denied health under the National Health Service? How many have denied pensions? How many have lost their job? This is a day of national shame, and it has come about because of a hostile environment policy that was begun under her Prime Minister.
So that is British Labour MP David Lammy, deeply impassioned about this issue. I mean, some people being jailed or deported who've lived in Britain for over half a century?
Yes, there was one publicized case of a man who had cancer, and because he was being treated as an undocumented person, he was denied cancer treatment by the state healthcare. And, you know, people were actually deported and threatened with deportation and lived with that looming over their heads. One man said that he was preparing to commit suicide if they actually went through with it and deported him to Jamaica.
Talk about your own family, when they came and their experience.
Well, I'm the child of Caribbean immigrants who grew up under British rule. My mother grew up in Dominica singing God Save the Queen every day, with, you know, the Queen on her money and her notebooks. And my grandparents made the decision to come to America, but others in my family decided to go to the UK. So I have cousins and relatives there. So it's very easy for me to imagine how, if my grandparents made a different decision, my parents could have been affected by the Windrush, and I could have been affected by the Windrush, because there's not birthright citizenship in the UK. So if your parents are decided to have been illegal immigrants, now you're in danger.
So talk about your thoughts and feelings over this weekend and the massive attention paid to the royal wedding.
Well, it was it would make me very happy to see that, you know, it is, you know, somewhat vacant symbolism, but, you know, that's nice enough that black people were being celebrated by this wedding. I think that the Black American contributions were a lot more visible, perhaps because we are American, and the bishop was an American, and the songs, "This Little Light of Mine," "Stand By Me," are American songs. But there were contributions by Black Brits and by Black Brits of Caribbean origin. So Sheka Kenna Mason is half Antiguan. And
the 19-year-old cellist, the
exactly.
first black musician to win the BBC classical music competition in its history.
Exactly, and his father's from Antigua. And the Kingdom Choir is a choir based in southeast London, which is a Caribbean bastion in London. So it was subtle, but there was that messaging of, you are part of this empire, you are part of this crown, whatever that might mean to individual subjects.
First, 11 months ago, an inferno in a high-rise block of flats, Grenfell Tower in London, killing 72 people. This tragedy has been called the worst in the city since the Second World War. Now, an inquiry has finally got underway. It's brief to investigate how the blaze happened and to hear the testimony of families who lost loved ones. The inquiry began with a 72-second silence in memory of those who died. Our London correspondent Rob Watson told me more.
Normally, whether in this country or, let's face it, anywhere else, tragedies are all about numbers, the number of nameless, faceless victims of some natural disaster or plane crash or shooting or some such. Now, what made this such a different day is that had many watching and listening in tears, is that this time we got the names and faces and life stories, and of course the anguish and pain of those left behind, including Marcio Gomez, the father of the youngest victim of Grenfell, his son who was stillborn after he and his pregnant wife were rescued from the burning tower.
So I held my son in my arms that evening, hoping it was all a bad dream, wishing, praying for any kind of miracle, that he would just open his eyes, move, make a sound. But as we know, that never happened.
Now, Rob, obviously part of the point of the inquiry is to work out exactly what happened, why it happened. Just give our listeners around the world some sense of what we know so far.
Well, it happened on a beautiful summer's evening nearly a year ago in a high-rise block of apartments housing, by and large, the poorer residents of a central London neighbourhood. It started thanks to a faulty piece of electrical equipment. Just how and why the fire spread so quickly will be the initial focus of the inquiry led by a man called Sir Martin Moore-Bick, who described it as the single biggest tragedy in London since World War II and made no apologies for the inquiry starting with the stories of those who died.
Although what we shall hear and see over the coming days may be described as memorials, they are in truth much more than that. They are an integral part of the evidence before the inquiry. They will remind us of its fundamental purpose and the reason why it is so important that the truth be laid bare.
And finally, Rob, these inquiries can go on for a long time. Have we got any sense of how much longer the people we've just been hearing from will have to wait for answers?
Well, Andrew, this one doesn't have a fixed end date. We know that it has two parts. The first is going to be a what happened on the night, a sort of factual account of the events as they unfolded. The second part is broader and is about whether chances were missed to prevent this tragedy and to look more generally at the safety and provision of housing intended for use by the less well-off. Now, it's said all of that could take up to 2 years. Now, relatives are hoping this won't become yet another inquiry, you hinted at it there, that goes on for so long people have almost forgotten the original tragedy.
Our London correspondent Rob Watson with me.
Surveillance cameras have proliferated in recent years. Now, those at airports could soon be able to warn security officers when a passenger is lying. That's according to American scientists who've analysed millions of frames of individual facial expressions. The New York-based team hope the technology could in future help identify people involved in activities like terrorism or drug smuggling. The newsroom's Richard Hamilton reports.
Knowing when people are lying has been the holy grail of the security industry. Traditional lie detectors or polygraphs, which measure symptoms such as blood pressure or perspiration, are not foolproof. But now computer scientists from the University of Rochester think they've found the answer. They filmed more than 300 participants playing a game in which one acts as the interrogator and the other lies or tells the truth about a task.
We looked at all the frames when people are lying, telling the truth, and looked at the smile characteristics.
Professor Ehsan Hawk is one of the co-authors of the study. He says liars adopt a particular type of smile.
Often you can smile with your mouth, like you're raising your lip corner, or you can also smile with your eyes, like raising your cheek. And sometimes you can combine both of them, and that's called a true smile. Now, what we noticed was that when people are lying, they're showing this true smile, and that kind of surprised us a little bit, because why would that happen? A true smile when you're lying? But then when we looked at the psychology literature, we found that there's a theory called duping delight. And that means people often smile as they're getting away with it. And that's exactly the phenomenon we noticed in the data set that we collected while people are playing the game.
He says it's not possible for a criminal to change their facial expression to avoid detection in response to these findings, as this type of smile involves the involuntary movement of a cheek muscle that you can't control. He also found that interrogators tend to smile back when they're being lied to, and this could be important when it comes to training security officers. The research, which is still ongoing, is being funded by the US Department of Defense.
Richard Hamilton.
An update now on a story we brought you a couple of weeks ago about facial recognition technology. NPR's Martin Costi reported that American police have been reluctant to adopt, quote, real-time systems, the kind that ID people as they walk down the street. Now, Martin says it appears at least one police department is trying that out with the help of a very familiar tech company.
Believe it or not, that company is Amazon. It sells a video analytics tool called Recognition. It's cloud-based. You upload video along with the faces that you want it to scan for. Anybody can use it, but recently the company started pitching it to local governments.
City of Orlando is a launch partner of ours. It's a smart city. They have cameras all over the city.
This is Amazon employee Ranju Das talking up the product's public safety uses at a recent conference.
We analyze the video in real time, search against the collection of faces that they have. These could be their mayor. They want to know if the mayor of the city is in a place. They want to know if persons of interest they want to track.
That sounds like the real-time systems that police in China have been bragging about recently. Networks of cameras that track where someone is or has been. American police have not had this ability yet, as far as has been documented. And the privacy laws here are not clear about whether the police would need a warrant to do this kind of scanning. In a written statement, Orlando police called this a pilot program, but would not take follow-up questions. Later, after the web version of this story was published, they sent another statement saying real-time facial recognition had been tested on only 8 cameras in the city and did not involve the identification of members of the general public. The department has not explained its future plans for the system.
We're talking about a new technology that supercharges surveillance.
Matt Cagle is with the ACLU, which first noticed Amazon's push to sell facial recognition to police. It's now asking Amazon to stop doing so. While there are other companies that sell facial recognition to law enforcement, he says Amazon is different.
Amazon is one of the largest technology companies and one of the largest cloud computing providers. So we find it really difficult to overstate Amazon's ability to influence whether facial recognition becomes widespread in the United States or not.
In a written statement, Amazon says it, quote, requires that customers comply with the law and be responsible when using the service. The company also played down just how real-time the facial recognition is in Orlando. But for the ACLU, the concern isn't so much about what these systems can do now. It's about what they could grow into. The cloud-based nature of Amazon's service makes it especially easy to expand and adapt facial recognition. Deputy Jeff Talbot is the spokesman for the Washington County Sheriff's Office near Portland, Oregon. Deputies there use Amazon to compare photos taken in the field to a database of mugshots.
They've created a little tool where you upload, sends you your results, and you can continue on with your investigation.
And this service is astonishingly cheap.
We pay literally a couple dollars a month.
That kind of automatic mugshot comparison used to require systems that cost tens of thousands of dollars. Facial recognition is now becoming just another digital commodity, available to even the most cash-strapped police departments, despite the fact that there's been very little public debate about what the rules should be for how police use it.
Normal days, it started out, and then loud bang, my ear starts ringing, another loud bang follows that one. I didn't know what it was. Mine was going crazy, had no idea what was going on. I jumped under the desk and flipped it up in front of me. A lot of more loud bangs. Just kind of freaking out at that point. Everybody was yelling, everybody was scrambling. We peeked around, some more loud bangs, and I was kind of freaking out at that point. And I look over at the door, and I guess he had walked out for a little while. And I ran out the door, jumped over a wall, started running into the parking lot. Had no idea I was even shot until I looked down at my shirt and dripping blood everywhere.
16-year-old Romy Schubert describing what no student should have to experience at school, but something that happens all too often in the United States. Romy Schubert was a student at Santa Fe High School in Texas, where a shooting rampage last week left 8 of his fellow students and 2 adults dead. The Santa Fe massacre came just 3 months after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Florida, where a young man armed with a semi-automatic rifle shot and killed 14 students and 3 teachers. In the face of recurring tragedy, some schools are looking for some help from the technology of facial recognition. The idea is to use facial recognition software as a tool to catch potentially dangerous people trying to get into the building. Michael England is the president of St. Mary's High School in St. Louis, Missouri, one of the first schools in the U.S. to install facial recognition technology on its campus. He joins us now from St. Louis. Hello.
Good morning.
How does this facial recognition system work in your school?
We have 2 entrances that we have the cameras at in our school, the front entrance and the back entrance. We leave the outer door open, and we have a vestibule that's locked. And when students or anybody in our community that's in the system walks into the school, they look up at the camera. The camera recognizes them as somebody that we accept into our school community. The light turns green and the door unlocks, and they are able to walk into the school.
When did you decide to install this?
We did it 4 years ago. It was kind of cutting edge, but the piece of the technology that I liked the most was the part where someone showed up that we didn't want to have in our school. And in those cases, we would enter the picture of that person into the system. And if that person walked into the school and looked up at the camera, not only would the door not open, but alerts would immediately be sent out, everybody that we wanted the alerts sent out to, that this person was on our campus. And that would include, administrators, but also we could have it include the police department and be something that would allow us to have as quick of a first response as I think we could possibly have.
What's it like to be responsible for a school that has hundreds of students in an age where every few weeks somewhere in the U.S. students and teachers are being shot down?
It's obviously it's very concerning and something that I could never imagine that we would see in our lifetime, much less be happening as often as it's happening now. And it makes being a school administrator, it makes school safety probably your number one priority for all of your students.
So let's talk a little bit more about this database of faces. So regular students, they're in there, the camera recognizes them, they can come in. What about, who would be on your list of people not to let in?
It normally would be a reaction to maybe something that's going on at the school. Possibly we occasionally have to deal with a divorce situation where one of the parents is not allowed access to we're an all-boys school, would not be allowed access to their son. In a case of expelling a student, we would have to possibly be concerned with that student coming back on campus. If it just kind of depends upon the situation, but those would be 2 examples of times that we would use such a thing.
And has it actually alerted you to anyone who's been banned from the school?
We've used it 4 or 5 times and put the picture in there to prepare ourselves if the people showed up at the school. Fortunately for us, they have not shown up at the school, but it has allowed us to test it out and to feel a little bit more secure knowing who's coming on our campus and whether we want them on the campus or not. If
you have a student who decides who's already in the school, but they haven't raised red flags for you, that wouldn't stop them, would it?
No, I mean, I just don't, this is another layer of security, and it helps us to try to be proactive. But the unfortunate situation and the reality of it, as you just pointed out, is that, something like that could happen. And, this system that we have in place would not be 100% foolproof in helping us with a situation such as this. So that's why we have to pay attention, and we do pay attention to social media, and our students are very good about alerting us if they think that there's anything that's something that we should concern ourselves with. Fortunately for us, we've had very, very, very minimal situations that have come our way, and the ones that have, we've been able to deal with pretty easily.
Have you ever been alerted to something on social media and put a warning for a student's face because of that into your database?
Yeah, we have not yet had to do such a thing, but it's interesting that I just went to a seminar just recently and ran into two gentlemen who work for a Deloitte was the security company that they worked for, and their conversation with me was about that they're interested in trying to put together a database that would be similar to a terrorism database. This one would be specifically about school shootings and something that would monitor social media and other outlets that would then allow the names of possible people that might be putting something out there that gives some hint that they might be wanting to do some type of school violence, and putting that into a database that would be shared by all the schools in the area, that all the schools could share and use and try to get ahead of the game a little bit.
How do you respond to people who say using that kind of facial recognition technology would infringe on the civil rights of students?
I say that my number one priority is the safety of my students and the safety of my school community. And that's the ground that I stand on, and that is my number one priority. And that priority is head and shoulders above any other priority that there is, and it's not even close for me. So that's what I would say.
What about other options?
Other options, I'm sorry, other options with what?
For keeping them safe. Are there?
Well, I think, we're constantly doing drills inside of the school. Active shooter drills we just started to do, which we went through as a faculty and staff, which was really a bit alarming going through the active shooter drill. We actually had people in the building shooting cap guns, and we went through several different scenarios. And in one of the scenarios, myself and the athletic director had to tackle one of the fake shooters in the drill. So we're constantly going through drills, trying to prepare ourselves, and please God that it never happens, but to prepare ourselves if we ever find ourselves in that situation.
Would you want to see your teachers armed?
I'm not on board with that. That's not something that I want, and I think I speak for my school community that that's not something that we want. I think that there is a certain culture of safety and community that needs to be in the school. I understand that side of it, and people thinking that how that could help should that happen, and I understand those types of things. But I think overall, what it does for the school community is I think it puts you on edge constantly, and I don't think that that's good for anybody in our community.
Michael England, thank you for your time today.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Michael England, president of St. Mary's High School. He's in St. Louis, Missouri. Well, for more on just how effective this kind of technology can be in practice, I'm joined by Jonathan Frankel. He researches artificial intelligence at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He focuses on the potential and limits of AI. Jonathan Frankel is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Hello.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
What do you think of what we just heard from Mr. England?
Honestly, I don't disagree with anything he said in terms of this particular deployment of facial recognition. When I think back to, I'm fresh out of high school. I'm 25 years old. And so I experienced this reality firsthand a few years ago when I was still in high school. And when I think back to those days, every visitor who came into school had to go through an office and go through a security procedure before signing in. And in some ways, what he's described is just automating that procedure. It's sad that we're in a reality where this has to take place, but to me, this particular deployment of facial recognition isn't actually all that different from what we do manually today.
So you've looked at the science of facial recognition. How does it work?
So the way that facial recognition works is that we take what's called a machine learning algorithm, and what happens is it starts off kind of the same way a human brain does. It doesn't really know anything about the world. And we slowly show it pictures of faces and say, these two people are the same, these two people are different, and it slowly learns how to differentiate whether two people are the same or two people are different. So it's a completely automated algorithm, And I'll say, as a machine learning researcher, we don't fully understand how these algorithms work at a very low level. We know that they work very well in practice for the most part, but we don't actually understand kind of the nuts and bolts of what this algorithm is actually doing under the hood. And to me, that's cause for a lot of concern.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about some of the concerns, because there are issues about a bias that's built into the building of facial recognition. What are they talking about?
Definitely. So many studies at this point have found that facial recognition systems that tend to be used commercially are less accurate on people with darker skin and are also less accurate on women. Now, a lot of these studies will find slightly different results, but the general trend is these algorithms don't work equally well on everybody for the most part. And this could be for a number of reasons.
It's not racism.
For example, during this kind of teaching process, when you're teaching the algorithm how to differentiate faces, if you only show it faces of people with light skin, it's going to learn how to differentiate people with light skin and struggle with people with dark skin. So one problem is that we don't necessarily show it a wide enough range of examples, and numerous studies have shown that these biases do seem to exist in practice.
Well, that's no small thing given the biases that already exist against people of color.
Definitely. So some of the research I've done in the past has been looking at this technology in the context
Looking at behavior in
context of American policing, which, as we already know, has all sorts of biases for people of color. And this is just one more way of exaggerating those biases. So it's deeply concerning to me as a researcher. This is something that's an unsolved technical problem in large part. And it's something that I think about and myself and my colleagues are working on every day.
What other concerns do you have about this technology?
So I definitely have privacy concerns in general about face recognition technology. The deployment that was just described doesn't concern me all that much because it's just another form of verifying that the people who enter the building are the people you want to enter the building. Whether it's done by a human being or done by a camera is just a matter of preference. But for these larger scale deployments that we're starting to read about, where there are, say, cameras deployed throughout a city that can recognize individuals and track wherever they go, this is an enormous privacy concern. This is a huge change in the status quo. So it deeply concerns me just as a citizen, let alone as someone who cares about privacy deeply.
How widespread is the use of this technology now, then?
It's much more widespread than we know about, I think, has been the lesson that I've learned. Every time that I hear about another deployment of this, it's because some researcher or some journalist filed a Freedom of Information Act request or obtained some documents that showed it was being used in a place where we didn't know it was being used. A few years ago, when I worked on this at the Georgetown University Law Center, one of my colleagues filed over 100 Freedom of Information Act requests to get data on these systems from police departments around the country, and we found it to be enormously widespread. More than half of all American drivers have their driver's license photo in the FBI's face recognition database.
And why is it there? Just because they can have access to it? Because it's shared?
It's there because states have formed agreements to share this information with the FBI in hopes of being able to identify potential criminals who they see in data they've captured or in other sources of information about a crime that's been committed. You can think, security camera footage, something along those lines. So you can imagine how this serves a police purpose, but in all of these respects, we need to consider not only is the privacy cost worth the law enforcement benefit, but also is the financial cost worth the benefit. And in a lot of these deployments, these systems are very expensive. I'm not sure they're all that effective.
This week on The Takeaway, we started a conversation about homeschooling. In the wake of another school shooting, we heard from some of you that you're either homeschooling your kids or considering it. But some of you called in with different reasons.
My name's Melody. I recently withdrew my son from high school. In our case, we don't have to be subjected to casual racism and drug exposure. So we both believe we made the right choice.
Takeaway listener Melody Cunningham balances work and homeschooling her 14-year-old son in Weymouth, Massachusetts. And she's part of a larger trend of Black families in the United States who are choosing to take their kids out of public schools for a better or safer place to learn. We got Melody back on the line to talk about why she made the choice.
My son was experiencing a cavalier attitude towards what is casual racism at his high school, and he had just had enough. We had broached the idea of homeschooling prior to the incidents, and he just decided that it was time and he was ready to get out of school and that I could do a better job, possibly.
And so can you give us a sense of some of the examples of some of the incidences that he had experienced?
For sure. Casual use of the N-word, as well as him in particular sitting in a world history class whereby a student said out loud that slavery shouldn't have been abolished.
And we also know that there's data that shows that black students are more severely disciplined than white students in schools. Wondering if that factored into your decision to homeschool, or whether the threat of violence, i.e. school shootings, was another reason why you, in addition to the racism that you're saying your son experienced.
Oh, absolutely. We had already witnessed and been, I'll say, victims of what I perceive to be inequity. And as far as disciplinary actions, the student who said what I told you didn't receive any sort of disciplinary action, whereby my son said something to another student and he was suspended immediately. That, and definitely threats of violence, that has given me a peace of mind knowing that that aspect has been eliminated. We don't have to worry about that. And, he feels as though there are several ticking time bombs in his school alone who could quite possibly be capable of the sort of violence we've seen in the 22 other school shooting cases this year.
You mentioned also history, and I'm curious to know what that looks like when you're homeschooling an African-American student.
Oh, this was an excellent opportunity, and I'm now so glad that I did it, because I have the opportunity to teach him a lot more than what is standard in the schools, whereby black children are, it's not inclusive of our history, and I'm able to teach him about, great African kingdoms and people like Denmark VC who fought against slavery, and those sorts of people that he otherwise wouldn't have heard about because the curriculum does not include us and does not give us a starting point for greatness whereby he can take into his life later on and understand that we were a lot more than slaves.
Now, tell us about what the impact this has had on you.
It has not impacted me the way I thought it would. He's in high school and is able to do a lot of his learning autonomously. If at any time it does interfere with my work, I will rather change my work and figure that out as opposed to putting him back into the dangers of the public school system.
And are seeing, actually my interest in this started with a Facebook conversation I saw friends of mine having specifically about black families beginning to do more homeschooling. Are you personally seeing other black families or families of color more broadly considering taking your cue and homeschooling their kids?
I absolutely am. And I actually got the motivation from someone that I know who was homeschooling. I know a lot of black families who are homeschooling and a lot more who are, just starting their families and intend to homeschool. Yeah.
And how's your son doing?
He's faring really well because I'm able to give him that one-on-one attention and really make sure that he's thriving and ingesting everything that he's learning.
Melody, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Melody Cunningham in Weymouth, Massachusetts. Precise data on this is hard to pin down, but some estimates put the number of homeschooled African-American children in the United States at around 136,000, or about 8% of the total homeschooled population. And some research says those numbers are on the rise. Donna Y. Ford is with me now, and she's going to help us put all of this into context. Context. She's a professor and endowed chair at Vanderbilt's Peabody College of Education. Donna, welcome.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Well, let's go to the beginning, or let's go back historically. Why have black families chosen homeschooling historically?
I think homeschooling is relatively new to black families compared to white families. And I believe that it relates to opportunity and resources. So black families tend to be lower income compared to white families. have different occupations and different educational levels. So when you don't have as many resources, it's going to make it very difficult for you to homeschool your child. You just won't have that opportunity. So, for example, my grandson is 6 years of age, and he's in a parochial school. We chose not to put him in a public school for some of the reasons we'll be talking about. But if my son had the opportunity, he would probably homeschool my grandson, but his occupation prohibits that.
So let's talk a little bit about why there are more Black families homeschooling today than there have been in the past. What are some of the drivers of that trend?
So in the reports that I've been reading, about 80% of families, and I'm just talking about families in general, say they homeschool their children because of issues around safety, peer pressure, things like that. And that is definitely an issue for African Americans too. But I'm going to use one word that I think describes why Black families tend to homeschool their children, and that's racism.
It's not racism.
Discrimination in school settings.
And that type of discrimination could range from the use of language or, we've seen data that even shows higher rates of school discipline towards Black students. Are those the things that you're referring to?
Those are the things I'm referring to. So, for example, I was looking at a video of a 10-year-old, this was a couple of days ago, 10-year-old Black male, whose teacher told him that when he is 16 and the police shoot him, it will be, or kill him, I believe she said, it will be his own fault. I have concerns about teachers who have used the N-word with too many Black students. Then there's also offensive lesson plans, especially those regarding slavery. So all of this, miseducation with the curriculum, discrimination by teachers, takes a psychological toll on our Black students. And we feel that we have to remove them from school settings. And I want to be clear about not just things like name calling and miseducation with the curriculum. Black students are significantly underrepresented in gifted programs. So the most recent data from the Office for Civil Rights shows that Black students are 15.5% of our public schools, but only 9.9% of gifted programs. Black students are the most underrepresented in gifted education. And you mentioned discipline a few minutes ago. We are disciplined for subjective reasons. We get disciplined because of our hairstyle, the clothes we wear. There's research saying we get disciplined, meaning suspended also at disproportionate rates for skin tone, body, and, the way we speak. I have to share this piece of data because I think it'll create another sense of urgency and clarify even more why Black families are increasingly homeschooling. Black boys are 19% of the preschool population. However, they are 52% of all suspensions.
Wow! Hey, yo, drama, hold up, son. Hold on. Stop the motherfucking record. Right. I want you to pon the replay, drama. Pon the replay. Let's give him one more chance, man. Run that shit the fuck back.
Black boys are 19% of the preschool population. However, they are 52% of all suspensions. No one could possibly deny that discrimination is not in effect. It is impossible to have those numbers without there being discrimination. Our children overall are suspended 3 times more than white children. And just as problematic, we are 2 to 3 times overrepresented in certain categories of special education. So this underrepresentation in gifted and overrepresentation for special education and discipline creates a sense of urgency and desperation among Black families to say we've got to save our children from the educational system and homeschool our children ourselves.
And is this empowering for Black communities and Black parents, or is it adding more stress to an already stressful situation? And is it letting public schools off the hook?
I think it is empowering when you have the means and are able to homeschool your child. I think if you really don't have the means, but you make that necessary sacrifice, have to give up some things so that you can make homeschooling possible, it definitely adds stress. And then the last part of your question was, I forgot.
Are we letting public schools off the hook by really doing the job that they should be doing?
I think we are letting schools off the hook when we have to resort to homeschooling to get our children a high-quality education. And by letting them off the hook, I'm saying we are not holding them responsible and accountable for doing what is their job, and that is to educate children. So instead of fixing the problem, yes, I believe we're running away from the problem when we decide to homeschool our children, but we don't want our children to be sacrificial lambs either. And that goes back to my grandson. I am a product of public schools. I'm a proponent of public schools. But until I know that my grandson is going to get a rigorous education, I can't put him in the surrounding public schools.
Yeah, I've got to warn you, Steve, the details of this story are very disturbing, and so is the video, but that's exactly what we want to show you.
You want to mock me? Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
This video was taken in Mr. Cochran's class at McWilliams Middle School. That's 13-year-old 8th grader Jamal McNeil walking out.
It made me feel like teachers don't care about students and there's no protection at school.
Since this March 2nd encounter, Jamal says students in Mr. Cochran's agriculture class have been terrified, sharing concerns amongst each other.
I don't want him as a teacher. I don't feel safe around him.
Jamal says on that day, Mr. Cochran's wife had stopped by the classroom to drop something off. The children overheard him swear at her.
It's like kids do. We say, ooh, you cuss. And then out of everybody in the class, he picked me. And he made me get up out my seat.
His mother reported the incident to the principal, who promised to have an administrative hearing that following week. She says that never happened.
What makes me upset is that this incident would have been handled with Jamal properly. This second student would have never been assaulted.
Last week, a parent of a child from McWilliams Middle came forward with strong allegations against Mr. Cochran. She told our Morgan Norwood he grabbed her son, spit in his face, and called him the N-word. Jamal says it happened to him, too.
He said it's people like the N-words that's trying to stop me.
56-year-old James Cochran has been working with the school district since April of 2007. Right now, he's suspended with pay. Cumberland County school officials saying they are aware of the allegations and are investigating.
I don't think no other child should have to endure what my child has endured.
In Fayetteville, Akila Davis, ABC 11.
Cell phone camera rolling as a fugitive in Lorain is arrested, and what a U.S. Marshal is allegedly heard saying in that video is causing all the controversy. News 5's Homa Bash digging into this all day. Homa, he supposedly called the man a racial slur.
Yeah, Rob, the marshal is heard calling the fugitive the N-word. We confirmed that marshal is now on leave while an investigation is underway. The marshal's office saying they have a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of behavior and that kind of language. The racial slur was used during the arrest of Zaire Duffy in Lorain on Friday. Duffy was wanted by the U.S. Marshal's Fugitive Task Force for an aggravated robbery out of Elyria. He led officers on a chase, even slamming into a police cruiser at one point. When marshals and officers caught up to him, his passenger started a Facebook Live broadcast.
Get out and get down! On the ground! Face first!
About 2 minutes and 20 seconds into the video, as Duffy is being arrested, you can hear the marshal refer to him as the N-word. It appears the marshal thought he was alone in the car at the time, not realizing the phone that was recording was tucked into the seat. Gene Rice has been the Lorain NAACP president for the last 24 years, says that marshal should be out of a job.
This person, or who, if it was more than one, they need to be taken from that position. I'm sorry. There's no other answer to it because they have done it before. This time they got caught.
Zaire Duffy has an extensive criminal history. Investigators are also asking he be charged with felonious assault on police officers for what he did during the chase. And the marshals told us in a statement that they are disgusted by the use of such repugnant language by one of their own, and they are investigating. They say that since it's an internal matter, they can't release any more information about that marshal in question. We'll keep following this and let you know what happens next. Homa Bash, News 5.
I want to be a cop.
This week, a panel of experts and family members will gather at the University of Washington to talk about police violence and strategies to stop it. KUOW's Patricia Murphy reports.
The discussion will focus partly on Seattle police. The panel will also explore community and legal strategies to stop police violence. Amy Hagopian is on the faculty of UW's School of Public Health. She says the problem of police violence is one that could benefit from a public health approach.
We'd like to see more research on this. We'd like to see preventive activities take place. We'd love to see new capacity to respond to mental health crises other than to deploy officers with guns.
The panel includes Katrina Johnson, Charlena Lyle's first cousin, former Seattle Police Chief Norm Stamper, and Jorge Torres, the leader of Seattle Black Lives Matter protests. Earlier this year, Torres won $85,000 from the city after Seattle officers threw him to the ground and arrested him during a protest in 2014. An officer was recorded on dashcam audio targeting Torres by his race. I'm Patricia Murphy, KUOW News.
Like one white man said in the late 1950s, he said he doesn't care what kind of car a Negro has. He said he's still a nigger. And when he rides by in a shiny car, to him, it's just a monkey in a car. White people built a car, put a monkey in it, trained the monkey to drive the car, so now you're looking at a monkey in a car. See, but black people don't see themselves that way. But this is how the white supremacists see us, and they are the ones who run our business.
Last thing, because speaking of that, I want to get to Milwaukee, speaking of brutality, where you have the Milwaukee Bucks player. And again, this is why Colin Kaepernick knelt in the first place. For things like this, when police basically just declaring war on black people, people of color. I don't know if you hadn't written anything on the Milwaukee thing yet, have you? On the Milwaukee team?
Yeah, I kind of put both of those situations all in one column because the video came out on the same day as the policy, which is why I felt like you can't write about one and not the other, and you need to put it all together to show the impact. But I saw a tweet the other day that kind of broke down Milwaukee, and I had forgot about this, and it reminded me. Remember a couple of years ago, John Henson from the Bucks?
Yes.
Got profiled at a jewelry store.
Right.
And then last year, the mayor in Milwaukee made those comments and said, like, this is the most racist city he's ever lived in. Wow. And they've got all these problems. And then you got the situation with Sterling Brown. So the universe has been trying to tell us about Milwaukee for the last couple of years. We just didn't connect all the dots.
Right. And
but now, since this 30-minute video is up on YouTube and you can watch it as much as you want.
Right.
Milwaukee's on the clock.
Yeah. If you can,
there's no running from this.
Yeah. If you can stomach the video, and it's not one of the worst videos, unfortunately, that we've seen in terms of the violence, but just the way it went down in terms of, I mean, this guy, all he did was park his car like horizontally, like run into the drugstore, and he comes out and all of a sudden he's getting intimidated by the police. They call about, I've never seen so many police cars in my life for a traffic stop. They're trying to intimidate him from the start. He did not back down, which is his right. I mean, he didn't threaten the cops. He was just.
But you know what the best two parts of the video are?
What?
And they show the issue with police. They prove the issue with why black people feel a certain way about police. One is if you pay attention in how the police officer is speaking to Sterling Brown at the beginning,
right,
and the other officers around them, the audacity in his tone lets you know that they can get away with anything.
Right. I mean, he pointed to the fact that he had the camera on.
Yeah, because they know. Listen, I know I'm getting filmed and I'm messing up, and I know I'm still gonna keep my job.
Yeah,
exactly. And number two, if you pay attention at the end, when they figure out who he is, how everything starts to change, and they start to back up more, and they start to give him some more room, and their tone gets a little softer, because it was like, we messed up, and they knew it.
But they're only
those two situations. If you pay attention to that video, it's like, yep, this is why we don't like the police.
And the cop saying pretty early on, this is my space right here. I run this.
This is mine right here.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Like, what gives you ownership of another man's car?
Right, your mother.
Like, when did you? Who said you could own 2 handicap spots? Like, I didn't know you and your $50,000 salary that came in the job requirements. Like, I didn't know that was a perk of the job that you own property.
And that
in
was,
the city.
and I'm sure that played, a big part in the cops' behavior. Seeing a black man get out of an expensive car, they wanted to mess with him from the very start.
Yeah, and who are you? Yes, I mean, it's all of this, and I think that's sort of the damning part of sports. You talk about football, basketball. For a lot of folks, man, this is the only exposure or time they really get a chance to interact with black folks. Right. This sport, so you got all this racist stuff sort of rolling down on and cascading on football, basketball, all the racist notions we've got about black folks, all the issues we've got with black men, comes out in the NBA and the NFL. All this, the hatred, the resentment, and for some reason though, for music, when you see Jay-Z or whatever, and a lot of their kids are like dancing to, I guess that's probably where a lot of them have problems. Their kids are like playing Jay-Z.
Right.
There's something about this sports space that just really F's them up. When you have young black men, doing well, occupying the space. It's okay if you're in the Bucks arena.
Right.
It's okay when you're in the arena. And it's okay when you're on the field. But like the coach said, this is my space. When you step out.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, May 26th, 2018. So I have been told. This is our weekly compensatory call-in. Dial in if you have observations, thoughts, comments on what you heard from the opening sound clips. If you have your own observations or suggestions, the number to dial 641-715-3640. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. First of all, the C.O.W.S. t-shirts. Give out the reminder. We're going to do the order. Trav is going to do the order at the end of this week. Brand new order for C.O.W.S. t-shirts. Formerly, it said, please respect me like I am a white person. The new shirt, it will say, please treat me like I am a white person. I don't think that's a colossal change, but just the update so that no one is confused. But Trav is doing the order this week. The shirts are $25. That includes shipping and handling. Send an email if anybody had difficulties. If the email didn't work correctly last week, I think I added an extra S onto shirts. So the correct address, C.O.W.S., C-O-W-S in all capital letters, shirt, singular, shirt, S-H-I-R-T @gmail.com. C.O.W.S. shirt @gmail.com. C.O.W.S., C-O-W-S, all capital letters, shirt @gmail.com. If you drop him an email, he can give you all the information you need. If you're outside the United States, you can let him know where you are on the globe, and he will figure out the shipping and handling, extras and what have you for the shirts. If you're getting multiple shirts or if you need a sizing chart, the most important thing, do not email Gus T Renegade about the shirts. Email cowsshirt@gmail.com, and again, the order should be going in at the end of the week. So go ahead and give him an email, and he will take care of you. I think some folks already got shirts this time around, like recently within the last few days. And then once the new order is in, you'll be able to get shirts probably next month, and there we go. Next, as always, the COWS listener-supported counter-racist radio. Invest if you think the program is constructive. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Listener-supported counter-racist radio. Huge thanks to all of the investors who have supported, really kept the cows on the air for nearly a decade. I hope the broadcast has been, continues to be worthy of your time and energy. All of the folks who have invested, visited the wish list at Amazon.com. It's under Gus T Renegade, is also linked at my blog. Thanks a ton. All of the items that have been nabbed, it's been super supportive over the years and has helped keep the cows on the air, hopefully distributing constructive counter-racist information to help non-white people, victims of racism, get accurate content about what racism is, how it works, what it means to be classified as white. Blog address again, racism-notes.blogspot.com, and hearty appreciation to all the investors of the cows. Next, I was at yoga today, did 2 classes, of course. Actually, I was there yesterday. It just happened that the instructor mentioned it again today. But suspected racist yoga instructor, sometimes they'll tell little anecdotes and stories either at the beginning of class or at the end of class, just to kind of get you to think about, other aspects of the yoga practice. I'm just going to read the portion. She mentioned a book. The book that she mentioned that this is from, Radical Acceptance, Awakening the Love That Heals Fear and Shame. That's the book. So this is the portion that she read. In bullfighting, there is an interesting parallel to the pause as a place of refuge and renewal. It is believed that in the midst of a fight, a bull can find his own particular area of safety in the arena. There he can reclaim his strength and power. This place and inner state are called his querencia. As long as the bull remains enraged and reactive, the matador is in charge. Yet when he finds querencia, he gathers his strength and loses his fear. From the matador's perspective, at this point, the bull is truly dangerous, for he has tapped into his power. She shared that in class. I thought that was relevant. I think someone we know, or maybe even some ones we've heard within the context of white supremacy discussion about bullfighting and matadors. Someone used to talk about that regularly. Same instructor. In addition, she gave today, like an hour before we went live, she gave a story about cows. And once again, one of those signals where I thought, maybe I am supposed to be here, could be signal from the creator. I will give one more anecdote just because she mentioned the bullfighting and I said I'll ask. So I got the book and I just went flipping through. This is one more anecdote that was in the book. A pause is by nature time limited. We resume our activities, but we do so with increased presence and more ability to make choices. In the pause before sinking our teeth into a chocolate bar, for instance, we might recognize the excited tingle of anticipation and perhaps a background cloud of guilt and self-judgment. We may then choose to eat the chocolate, fully savoring the taste sensations, or we might decide to skip the chocolate and instead go out for a run. When we pause, we don't know what will happen next, but by disrupting our habitual behaviors, we open to the possibility of new and creative ways of responding to our wants and fears. Again, someone that I think we know used to talk about the relevance of chocolate in the system of white supremacy, but those were just two quick flips from a book that was mentioned in my yoga class. Other notes that I had, my counter-racist suggestion, I think Mr. Fuller says regularly, not all white people are racist, has been saying that for a number of years, who knows how long, long time. Beyond the fact that I do not think that that is an accurate statement, because I don't think anybody, and if anybody on this line, if you can point to a white person, an individual classified as white, and you can present evidence, irrefutable evidence that will stand for the next 50,000 years that this individual is classified as white, but they are not, absolutely, no way, shape, or form, racist. They have never witnessed an act of racism and done nothing. All of the evidence. There's no individual classified as white that you could point to, and that whole submission about infants and elders, that is rubbish. That does not count for me. That is not logical in an argument where we're talking about people practicing racism. To just mention someone who's not able to function, that is absolute rubbish and a waste of time. It would have to be a functional individual classified as white. You're not going to be able to find someone that you can say there's evidence that this individual is classified as white, but he's not racist. On that basis, I think it would be best to stop saying not all white people are racist. And this is not, beef with Mr. Fuller or any other victim of racism. I have VGQ as well, Victims Guaranteed Qualified. And further, I talked to Mr. Fuller about this directly. I don't have to gossip or talk behind anybody's back. I've talked to him many times. I talked to him about this directly years ago when I came to the conclusion about what it means to be white. And when I told him I've concluded to be white means to be racist, he said in a functional sense, that's all you got. Victims and racist. That's it. Make it simple. Actually, make it accurate. Make it accurate. That's what I started with. I do not think that that is an accurate statement to say that not all white people are racist. I understand the counter-racist logic as to why Mr. Fuller says it. I'm saying it should be discontinued because I've seen way too many victims of white supremacy. Our brain conditioning, we are hoping, praying, wishing really, really hard that there are some whites who are not racist. And that sentence, yes, I can still believe because not all white people are racist. So maybe Sarah is cool. She's kind of cute too. Maybe John is all right. He was at the white privilege conference. That's what it does. It opens up room for the possibility that is totally in error, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but again, most of this just comes back to what does it mean to be classified as white? So that is my counter-racist suggestion. We should eliminate that phrase, not all white people are racist, if you want to make sure that you are not saying that all white people are racist, regardless of what you think is true. If you want to make sure that you explicitly state that, you can just make a slight change and say, I'm not saying all white people are racist. That's all you have to do. That is a subtle change that makes a huge difference. I'm not saying all white people are racist. Just use that one. We should not say not all white people are racist because that is absolutely false. And in my view, it is dangerous for confused victims of racism. We don't need false hope. Continuing. Opioids are contaminating the shellfish in Seattle. I thought of Red in Nevada when I heard that. Wow. The drug use is that bad that the fish are getting high. Well, they said the levels weren't that high, or the shellfish specifically. They said the levels weren't getting that high, but I mean, wow. Can't blame that one on niggers because it's not that many black people in this here part of the world. Sleep hugely hugely important. The section that we began with, where they were talking about sleep and how you should think about that in the same way that people talk about diet or food. Oh my goodness, I have suffered. I was just thinking within the last 2 weeks, I think it was when Thomas in New York, and we had another caller who dialed in and was talking about how the stress on his job was disrupting his sleep pattern. And we've had so many people, myself included, who've talked about how their sleep has been disrupted in a variety of different ways because of white supremacy racism. I was thinking about doing a whole program where people could call in and just talk about the different ways that their sleep has been disrupted. I feel like I've been sleep deprived my entire life, but I thought that report was so important. I think racists, they do. I almost used the sound clip of James Meredith. 2000, they did a documentary, I believe it was 2012, but they did a documentary, Ghosts of Ole Miss, and they had some of the race soldiers from the I think it was 1962, 50-year anniversary when the documentary came out. They admitted to the terrorist acts that they engaged in when James Meredith, quote unquote, integrated Ole Miss. And they said that they used to take a basketball and they had a whole floor just for James Meredith. Didn't want to, have any whites next to the Negroes. So he had a whole floor to himself. They would go upstairs and go to the room above his room and take a basketball and bounce it all day and all night long. He said, he admitted on camera, he said that they had shifts. They would take turns so that they could do this all day and all night so that he would not get any peace to sleep or to rest, just constant racket. And we've had programs where black people have talked about how whites have come and made noise and cursed late at night just to keep them up. Standard operating procedure, but whites, they know the importance of quality rest. Last thing I'll get in, that statistic about the preschool suspensions, unless I'm in error, I think she said it was black male students specifically make up 19% of preschool students, but 52% of the preschool suspensions, boy, that is a heaping dose of black male privilege right there. Wowee. And then to be able to get a major news outlet to cover the story to talk about it. Wowee. The scourge of black male privilege. I almost want to vomit every time I hear anyone suggest that such a notion exists on a planet where you have statistics like that, unless you think that those numbers are bogus. If we have any parents that are homeschooling, would be grand to hear from you. Any parents, black parents, non-white parents, if you are homeschooling, would be awesome to hear how your academic plan has unfolded. With that, the number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. If we could take 5 minutes to share whatever thoughts you have, that would be grand. Make sure everyone gets at least one chance to speak. If you have additional comments or questions, if you could just wait until everybody speaks once, and then you can get your additional comments in. If you could use your mute button, that would be super appreciated. If you know you're in a noisy environment, or it's windy outside, or you got the TV on and you're watching the basketball game, or whatever's happening in your life, make your comments, use your mute button. Preserves the quality of the broadcast, and we don't have to fight over all that unnecessary racket. If we could not use metaphors for this broadcast specifically, that would be super appreciated. It's been my experience that race soldiers frequently, they will use analogies and comparisons to spread deception, confusion. They will contrast two entities and insist that these are identical. Exact same thing, and frequently that's not the case at all. That is just acts of racism, white supremacy, and master deception. Non-white people, victims of racism, we are confused. We have been exposed to master deception for centuries, and many of us, myself included, we are still learning. As such, sometimes there are certain topics we just haven't come to a conclusion yet. Nothing incorrect about that, but it just means that sometimes we don't have logic, and so we'll substitute and insert a metaphor, an analogy of some sort. Often it just adds confusion. If we could be direct, specific, about what it is that we want to say, that would be grand. I will prompt about that. Just we're supposed to be mindful of what we are saying. That is a core component of counter-racism, unless I am in error. With that, I will get to the folks who dialed in with a hand up. If you all have comments, questions that you would like to add, line should be open. Feel free to share your thoughts.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, Thomas in New York.
Greetings, Gus. Greetings to all the callers. Yeah, great clips. I'm just going to touch on a couple of them. The opioid in the water up in the Seattle area, I believe, found inside of some of the shellfish. Very interesting. I remember a while back they had been talking about from the amount of birth control pills in certain parts of Europe, in particular Britain, the English Channel. They from the I guess when they flush the toilet, their urine goes into that body of water. They were no longer able to grow male fish. It totally changed the composition of the whole ecosystem within the water. And it sounds a lot like all these opioid addicts, especially in Seattle. Been an opioid headquarters. I remember in high school when Kurt Cobain and Nirvana came out, and I mean he was obviously, on something, which I think was heroin. And peeing that out and probably throwing that stuff in the water, it totally changed the composition. Just what white people do. The facial recognition, artificial intelligence, automation, and augmentation. That's the future, and the future is right now. The technology itself is as racist as the people that program them. And in Silicon Valley, less than 5% of the people making this stuff is black. So when you're training a program to recognize faces and recognize differences in people, you have to train it with the same biases that the human has. So that's how the human recognizes people. The facial recognition technology, this is the same one that Amazon allows you to use. You can take your picture with your Kindle or whatever, and then set it up to your Prime account and go inside of the Amazon-owned Whole Foods and put whatever you want in your cart, then walk right out the store and not pay right there, but they're going to charge you based off of your face. This is the same technology that they're putting inside of Orlando. Now, the reason why the facial recognition technology is a learning technology, so they're training it. Orlando is the third most visited city in the country. They have all these people from out of town, tourists, that will be able to weed through. So it's very important that they put it there. And this is going to be very bad coming forward for black people. Just some words for phrases that people should look up. This is what they're doing. Look up technocracy. Look up cybernetics, social credit, social inclusion, social exclusion, meritocracy, and surveillance capitalism, all of which must run through a 5G system because it doesn't have a lot of latency. And Gus, just an example, you could be walking home from yoga, and the facial recognition technology will recognize you. It will automatically assume that you're in the wrong part of town because you've been displaced. What is he doing in this part of town? The predictive policing will say a crime was supposed to take place in a 6-block radius you're in, being that you're in the wrong part of town. Let's go talk to this guy. And they'll be able to determine with their cameras if you're lying or not, if you're telling the truth. So this is where we're going. And I'll mute my line. Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, but I listened to Dr. Neely Fuller, and I do agree with him when he said we're in a prison. And he states that, being in a prison, when you get there, they force you to have a number, right? And you have to go by that number. You can't use your name when you came in there, which signifies you lose your identity. Now, there's been a lot of abstract theories on what can we do. However, you can't really measure those, like justice or whatever. It's surprising to me that black people here in America, no, I'm going to say this. Why is it difficult for us to change our names? I mean, that's something that we can measure. When whites enslaved us, they threatened us with death if we called ourselves, our original names, and we had to take their slave names, right? And so that was very significant for them to make us call ourselves by their names. However, since we're free and conscious, we are very resistant on doing away with their names. I mean, that's just one step that's concrete that can show that we're making steps away from their mindset. But we refuse to change our names. When I came into consciousness, my slave name used to be Reginald Tyrone Price. But when I came into consciousness, I did everything I could to change that and got me an original name. Since black people talk about the Creator, it would be important that we name ourselves after the Creator, whatever that is, identifying ourselves with the Creator. I disagree with the term non-white or not white, because that, again, makes us lose our identity. Now, from what I learned of our history of ancient black people, we identified ourselves as black. All right, the ancient Kemites, the ancient Arabians, they identified themselves as black because that has something to do with the creation of the universe, where we came from. And so they were proud to call themselves black. But now we're calling ourselves colored, African American, these particular terms, which don't identify ourselves with the creator of the universe. I suggest that your listeners think about a name that they want to call themselves, first and last name, and do away with the name of our enemies. At least that's a start, a concrete start into the direction in which we're going. But however, I don't see justice unless we do like the Haitians. In order to fight against white people, we have to fight and win against them in war. There's no other way. I don't remember any time in history where people convinced their oppressors by talking nice to them or appealing to their reason. All right? The people who freed themselves had to do it by means of war and conquering them and freeing themselves from those people. Black people in America don't have the arms to fight against white people to conquer them like we did in Haiti. All right? So I guess then we have to regroup and think, okay, if we can't beat them by arms, then another example is Black Wall Street. That's another example that we have in front of us of what did they do to become successful in establishing that small community in Oklahoma and trying to reduplicate that somewhere. That's an example of a concrete example. Even if we start that, we always going to know that white people are going to somehow try to interfere with that. We know that. So we have to be prepared. Anything that we do, white people don't mind us talking.
30 seconds.
But when they start seeing things, people, movers and shakers doing things at a certain point in time, then they'll start to interfere. And when they interfere, they always seem that they were successful in destroying our movements. So I just wanted to add my little 2 cents in there. Thank you.
That's another metaphor, 2 cents, concrete. That is a metaphor the way it's used as well. And I just want to make a statement. I've seen a lot of non-white people who have changed their name. The late Amiri Baraka is one. He actually married a white woman. I have not seen where changing a name is going to solve the problem of white supremacy racism. I could be.
I didn't say solve the problem. I said.
I know you didn't. Hang on a second, sir, though. I'm just going to the next person. Thank you kindly.
Okay, good.
Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, did you have commentary? Line should be open.
Can I be heard?
Greetings, Mr. Steele.
Greetings, and I just want to say that I'm calling from, I guess, along the 101 here along the Pacific Coast, and it's beautiful at sunset. I just love the view. But I just want to say that I'm very thankful to be here. I was recently in a really traumatic car crash whereby I was hit by a semi truck. So I just want to say thanks to the Creator, higher power, or whatever forces out there that are governing us. I'm safe and I'm able to speak with you today, and it's just really surreal being able to experience something like that and still be alive. I mean, I'm very thankful to be here. But yeah, to the previous caller, I don't know how much utility is going to come about from powerless people changing their names. I think that the situation that we need to come across is that we are at current in a position of powerlessness, and we need to, I guess, empower ourselves. And I think that there is some validity to the point you made, whereby I don't think that the solution is going to come about from speaking with white supremacists. And I don't like whenever the idea of dialogue or understanding or talking is promoted as a way of dealing with this problem of racism. I don't think that it's a problem of talking. I think that it's a problem of the fact that the people who are practicing this currently being punished for what they're doing. And it seems as though they're able to transgress upon us and our children with very little recourse. And I'm thinking that a mindset change in black people, might be necessary to kind of overcome or offset this current reality that we have. And I think that if dialogue does play a part in dialogue with each other, facilitated by victims like Gus T Renegade in this program that we're on today, I think that the cows is definitely something that I can see as constructive, and it's and I think that it's working towards the goal of replacing the system of white supremacy with a system of justice. So that's something that I'm thinking. But yeah, we're definitely currently in a state of war, and I think that we're definitely currently on the losing end, and I think that more of us need to recognize that we're in this situation, because I think currently a lot of us are not focused on eliminating this system, and I think that focus is going to be required to producing a solution to this problem. You know, the thing that really makes me worried about
30 seconds.
The times that we're in, the thing that makes me really worried about the times that we're in is that on TV, I'm getting more glimmers of regular TV, and it just seems that there's a renewed focus on the image of the black male as a rapist, and I think that we need to work very hard to preserve the image of black people, specifically black males, as innocent until proven guilty. And I'm going to go ahead and mute my line. Thank you.
Much obliged. Greetings are read in Nevada. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, thank you for taking my call. Hello, everyone, and definitely, Mr. Steele, I hope that you have a speedy recovery. Thank you for sharing with us as well your stories. The first thing, of course, favorite topic, the opioid crisis. Definitely glad that I'm not in Washington eating the shellfish, because that's something that, as I transition more to the plant-based diet, I've been eating less land animals and more shellfish. But I know with Southern Nevada, at least maybe I don't know, but at least what I've been told was that most of the food comes from, of course, like surrounding states. I'm assuming more so like with the seafood, maybe like California. And so hopefully California is not having that same situation. But then I'm assuming it was a woman speaking during that clip who had said that, well, she doesn't really, it was mainly affecting the urban areas. And so she doesn't really have to worry about that because she's not in the urban areas. That's not where she buys her food. And so, of course, it kind of makes me think about, I can't remember if I heard it from this program or from somewhere else, talking about how milk, like they would put like the really bad or low grade milk in the urban or quote unquote urban areas, or where black people are more likely to live, versus putting them in the areas where white people would drink the bad toxic milk. It even could have been like maybe even on the documentary. The other thing that I wanted to share, just going back to, there's actually two other things, going back to the sexual harassment situation or the Me Too movement. So I guess racists are finally bringing up allegations or bringing up charges against Harvey Weinstein, which seems like he should have been the first person to be charged, and now they're supposed to be starting to work on a case against Morgan Freeman. And I started watching some videos, and it just seemed like he was just really a real flirty male, but I'm not sure with like what they're accusing. They're almost putting him on the same, making him comparable to like Harvey Weinstein and like the people who have raped children. I forgot the white man's name, but you know, so many raped children. But it seemed like what I was seeing, he would say some things. People would just kind of laugh. They actually were talking about the stuff that he said on tape. So that's just another black male who is supposed to be the face of the Me Too movement. But one thing that I feel like is not, of course, getting the headlines that is not being, information that's not being distributed as what it should be, is there's Steve Wynn, who was the former CEO of the Wynn Casino in Las Vegas. It's a big casino on the Strip. And he also has, he had to step down because of his sexual misconduct or sexual harassment allegations. That he stepped down back in late March. And when I tried to look up more information about him and kind of comparing it to the information about Bill Cosby, it says that dozens of women have accused him, but it won't actually give you an exact amount. All it says is dozens. Even it could even say several dozens, sometimes few dozens. But if you Google, what I did was I Googled how many women accused Bill Cosby. For the most part, you can find how many accused him pretty easily. But with Steve Wynn, and I also read another article, this is in the Las Vegas Review-Journal, he actually was one of the top paid CEOs last year. He made almost $35 million last year. And but still no charges to the company. I think it's Wynn Limited or something like that, who actually runs the assortment of casinos. They are actually starting to go through an investigation, but it seems more of along the lines of a business standpoint, not of a criminal standpoint. And the last thing that I'll mention is that his real name, because I remember Thomas from New York saying something about these people's names, his real name, the name that he was born with, was Stephen Wynn Allen Weinberg. His father changed the name in 1946 to avoid anti-Jewish discrimination. And I'll leave it there. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Appreciate that. Red in Nevada. Other folks that we've not heard from at all, if you have commentary, line should be open.
Can I respond back again, please?
Hang tight, because there are quite a few people that have not shared at all. So if you can hang tight, sir.
That's what I'm waiting for.
Thank you.
I won't say anything.
Thank you, sir. Other folks that we've not heard from at all, if you have commentary.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. That's a great point that you brought up in the opening, Gus, about can anybody present a white person who doesn't exhibit like racist behavior. Well, I know you didn't say those exact words, but like I was thinking, I know I definitely couldn't. Even though they, because the only time I even have come in contact with them is either at work or at school. And I know in the system of white supremacy, I wouldn't say segregated or segregation, but the races have structured all of the residential areas and living environments where people are grouped in proximity with, like black people are living around other black people, and we don't have the same access and conveniences as much as white people have. But as far as the audio segments, I think it was interesting that the lady that was talking about the Bill Cosby experience that she had, she asked another question to another person. I don't know if that was a white or a non-white female, where she was talking about Selma Hayek and Lupita Nyong'o, and she mentioned like how they aren't treated like the white women, I think, when it came to Harvey Weinstein. So that was like the way that interview was constructed. I think that was an act of racism on the white people who put that together, because I have noticed that too. I haven't really seen her do too many interviews, but I did know that Lupita had reported an experience, and it definitely wasn't as valued or made as important as the white women. And there was a clip that I had, or a sound clip that I had sent over to you, Gus. Like I really want you to try and take a listen to that, because especially since Milwaukee was brought up in the audio, this was I think it's like a radio show or something like that, or kind of they have like these sessions up there, I think, about race and other issues, and it was two white people that this lady played examples of about talking to kids about racism, and these are apparently two white people. And just briefly, the first guy was a white man. He was saying that his son, I guess, was telling him about how a white woman was degrading an older black male, calling them a nigger like repeatedly, and they just told the kid that it was a naughty word and he shouldn't say it. So the kid went to school the white kid went to school, told another white child the word, and I guess he was just telling it to him, and this white child, racist, he started just blurting the word out and repeating it. So black child heard it and told the teacher, and both of those kids, white kids, got I guess suspended or wasn't able to go to recess for a couple of days, something minimal. And he was using that as a way to, I guess, detail his experience. So it shows that even though one white child mentioned not to say it, the other white kid, he still wanted to practice racism even at that age. And that was a concern in Milwaukee. But the other person was saying that the universe been trying to tell us about Milwaukee, but it's greater than Milwaukee. It's the entire world when it comes to racism, white supremacy. And that's all I have for now, and I'll give it to the next person. Thank you.
Entire known universe, indeed. I was thinking, just depends on how far back you want to go in the state of Wisconsin. Jeffrey Dahmer. Other folks we've not heard from at all. If you have commentary, if you could use your mute button, that would be helpful. In fact, our caller in Wisconsin, our software developer in Wisconsin, did you have commentary, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Gus. Good evening to all the callers. Can you hear me?
Crystal.
All right. Awesome. First, to Ken Steele, I hope that you recover well. I hope that the trauma wasn't too great. I really enjoy hearing what you have to say. And I do agree with Ken Steele. I think we need some sort of mind shift, as black people collectively. We may not see it, but I think that, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing with black self-respect, I think that's something that we can do to fight the system of white supremacy. In terms of Milwaukee, the NBA clip actually made me think of my 8th grade history teacher who was a black male, and he told us that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar left the Milwaukee Bucks because of the racism that he experienced in Milwaukee, which I can believe. So that reminds me of that over 20 years ago. I did have some observations for the callers and you, Gus. I actually was on a women's retreat last weekend, and it's a women's retreat that my AA group puts together every year. My AA group is mostly black. There are a few white people in the meeting, and sometimes we get non-white, non-black people, but for the most part it's black. And this women's retreat was actually started by my sponsor, who's a black female, and we typically go up to this house in West Bend, which is it's northwest of Milwaukee, maybe about 30 minutes away, and this white woman owns this house. The reason why we go there is because one of the black females in the group apparently works with this white female, and the white female was telling us or telling her about this house that she rents out and how fabulous it is. So we decided to go up there, and we get a good deal on it. So it was my turn to organize this retreat, and this white woman, I think most black people would consider to be a good, quote-unquote, good white person. But there were several instances of racism while I was up there. First of all, she insisted on staying in the house with us, even though there were 12 women coming to the house, 10 of which were black. One is non-white, non-black. She's Mexican, and then one was white. She insisted on staying in the house to the point where she slept on the floor in the laundry room. I guess she didn't trust us with her house. Then there was a conversation. Of course, when you get black people together, there's always going to be a conversation on racism. There were several this weekend, but one in particular, they were talking about there was a Milwaukee teen here who was beaten by police officers outside of Mayfair Mall, which is in Wauwatosa. It's in a predominantly white area. And so he was beaten by the police, and they were talking about that. And I was reiterating Mr. Fuller's "Don't fuss, don't fight, don't flee," and And this white woman, I'll say suspected racist just to be codified. The suspected racist says, "Oh, that's just so terrible. I couldn't even imagine, having to raise my children in such a way." And my sponsor decides to take this time to educate her on the racism that we face and how we have to teach our children, about how they should interact with police and interact with other law enforcement. And I just, and this white female, of course, is acting like she doesn't know anything about that, which I found very problematic. But at the same time, my sponsor has VGQ, so I can't sit up here and say, well, you're incorrect. You shouldn't be trying to educate this white female. So I just walked outside away from that situation. Then she has this house on 12 acres of the Kettle Moraine Forest. And she has a path through this forest that she takes people on. So we went on this walk through the forest, and at the top of a hill is a fire pit. And so she likes to say, "Oh, this is a Native American fire pit," and they kept it at the highest point so that they could do something. I don't even think she knew what she was talking about. To which I said, "Hey, well, what was the tribe that it came? What was the tribe that was here?" "Oh, I don't know." And I said, "Well, how do I know that this is a Native American fire pit?" "Oh, well, that I'm saying it is." I said, "Oh, okay." And everybody just sort of looks at me and doesn't say anything, and I'm just like, okay. So finally, this white woman's name is Diane. And there was another Diane who was black. And I'm sitting at the dinner table, and both Dianes are there. And they started calling this white female Diane W. and started calling the black female Diane B. And that is not their last names. And I said, okay, well, what does that stand for? And the white female says, "Oh, it's Diane White and Diane Black." And she says it just like that. And I said, "Oh, well, I'm not saying that ish." I said a different word. And I said, "I'm just going to call you by your real last names, Diane L and Diane G." And she gave me a look, and I can't use a metaphor, so I won't use it, but it was a look that she was really angry. It was interesting because my sponsor looked at me and she said, "Oh, you're not going to say that?" But it wasn't in a tone like, "Oh, you ain't going to say that." It was more like, wow, I wonder why she's not going to say that. So finally, she gives us this great deal because we'll clean up the house when we're done. And there she is, just ordering us around and making sure we do everything. It was like being on a plantation, and we're her maids. And it was just a really intense experience. I couldn't wait till I got home. It was really interesting to hear a lot of the females talking about racism with these two suspected racists there, especially since they're being very deceptive. They're acting like they don't know anything, and it was very difficult to be there, and not be overbearing, not be rude, not say, "Wait a minute, I think that's incorrect," because I didn't want to do that, especially in front of these two suspected racists, and they have VGQ anyway. So with that, thank you for letting me share, and I'll mute my line.
Quite a very refined race soldier, in my opinion. Her coming and sleeping, I think you said in the laundry room on the floor. Like, wow. It was important, I guess, to maintain surveillance. That's been a big one that we've been talking about on this broadcast for the past month, really. But seeing that a lot, that can be really difficult if you are with other non-white people, victims of white supremacy. Maybe they're a little bit more confused and you are responding correctly. What does it mean to be white? Got a race soldier here. Let me behave accordingly. Asking questions. Why are they calling you this? Just asking questions. That's not your last name. Why? And I think excellent decision, in my view. Anything like that that's just tacky and reinforcing racism, white supremacy, that's what we should be thinking about, calling people by colors, as opposed to just treating people correctly, calling them by their name, reinforcing racism, white supremacy, in my opinion. And I suspect that's why the race soldier had a problem with you saying, no, I'm not going to participate in this behavior. I'll say it that way. I'm not going to participate in this behavior where she got an attitude about it. And I've seen a lot of times where that alone can be enough, where everybody else in the residence, and all the other non-white people, just because this one individual classified as white got angry at you about this, I've seen where that can be enough, where a sizable number of the other non-whites, they too can be upset. What do you mean? We're all having fun. We're here on the retreat. That's B and that's W. We're just, you got to take things so serious. That's the problem with you. I have seen where that can happen exactly with victims of racism. You have to be very delicate with discretion in navigating those type of environments. Other folks we've not heard from at all. If you have a hand up, if you have commentary to share, line should be open. Proceed.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. This caller from 712. That first clip, I don't know if it was the first clip, but that clip when they were interviewing the lady about the Bill Cosby, whatever they got going on with Bill Cosby, when she said that we've been forced as women to be some type of damsel in distress, I just was so disappointed because black women, not to my knowledge, I'm 44, and I don't think my mom can even remember when black people or black women were allowed to be some type of damsel in distress, to be saved by some man. Although I know they're trying it now, a small percentage of white men, they won't allow the black men to be the saver. They'll get the white man to get up there and save you as some type of black woman that needs help being saved. And so that was disappointing. And with the mussels, with the shellfish and the opioids, I mean, it's a racist, white supremacist attack on shellfish out there, on marine life, on everything. Racism, it affects everything, and we really have to stand up here and go ahead and counter this thing and get this thing over with, because we got young people to think about here. And the last thing, the clip with the young person, or with them saying, the young black people that go to school, they have a small percentage, but they're the most people that are getting, suspended or locked up or whatever they're doing to these young people. And out here in the killing fields, and that's what I believe the United States school system is for young people. I know I felt like I was in the killing fields when I was going. And then they make you feel like you're not smart enough, and they try to front like the white children are smarter when they said that, we can't get any of our black children in the gifted program. Well, our black children will never be in the gifted program in mass because we've been denied, the resources to really train our children when they're young to excel over 100% in these schools, and it is really not designed for our children really to excel. And when they do, it is really a big surprise. And just at the end, I would like to say that we need to do everything we can with the countering the racism and really eliminating it. Worrying about kneeling at NFL games, I don't think we should really worry about that, because the people, they're just not going to stop watching the football. My suggestion, I'm just, a regular single mom right here in the hills of America at the part of Iowa. And my suggestion would be, have all the young black students that go to Michigan State or all of these top universities, have them go to the HBCUs, and then that should make the football games a lot more interesting. And I'll mute my line. Thank you so much for listening.
For sure. Appreciate that caller in the 702. Killing fields is a metaphor. Other folks who have dialed in, if we have not heard from you at all, if you have commentary, the number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564-943#. Press *61 if you would like to participate. Folks we've not heard from at all, if you have commentary.
Can I be heard?
May I be heard?
Ladies first.
Hi, Gus. Good evening, callers. This is my first time calling in, and we subscribed listener to the cows, and wow, what a breath of fresh air. So I realized that I have actually been following a code before I ever knew there was a code. And particularly, there has always been something inside of me. I wasn't really raised with understanding a code or how to deal with racism. My mother is Jamaican and my father is from Mississippi. I knew my dad grew up during Jim Crow time. He expressed to me having seen or known his cousin was actually hanged because he was dating a white woman, and when her family found out, she cried rape. So what we are hearing, what we are reading about, I'm actually going through the archives right now, exactly cowbell. I'm going through the archives and I'm listening to the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I read that book several years ago. And like many of the other callers who called in during that show, it actually changed my life and how I viewed myself as a non-white Black female in America. At work, in particularly, I live in the South Florida area, and I come in contact with white people, but my main issue that I have is with the Latino, non-white, but they're Hispanic and they consider themselves more white. Just dealing with them and, coming around me, they speak perfect English, but when they come in my area, they begin to speak Spanish. And talking to other non-white Black people about just living by a code. Like I said, I didn't know it was a code, but now I understand. So let me give you a quick example. Some months ago, my supervisor said, hey, there is a peace walk rally in an inner city area. We're looking for volunteers. But she makes a comment. She's a non-white Black female. I'm not going in that area. I won't be seen in that area, something like that. And I was very offended. And I pulled her to the side later, and I'm like, why would you say that? Why would you disparage our people, our area in front of non-Black people? Like, what you're doing is just feeding in to their racist beliefs of us and our neighborhoods as a whole. So I'm realizing that so many things that I'm, watching Mr. Nellie Fuller's videos on YouTube, listening to what you're sharing, listening to the code, like they laugh at me at work because they're like, you're just very sensitive. You're very sensitive. And at first I was a little offended by it, but that's okay. I'll be that person. I'll be that sensitive one to enlighten and speak out, and speak up for us. And many of us are blind. Many of us are confused. Many of us are lost. And as to how it is that we should carry ourselves, the conversation. And I have so many stories. I'll tell you one more quick one that is like funny, and I'm sure your callers will get a laugh. So there's a Latino female at work that I'm cool with. And so my daughter is natural. She's 19 years old, never had a relaxer in her hair ever in her life. I've always instilled pride in her and always, spoke about her, positively about her hair. So whenever this Latino female would see my daughter's hair or any other Black woman's hair, she would say, oh, I love it. I love when Black women wear their hair wild. I love it. So one day I'm showing her a picture of my daughter, and I was laughing because we went to take passport pictures, and they actually told her that her hair was too big and she had to bring her hair down to fit in the frame. At first I was a little offended, but then I realized, no, that is a rule. All your hair, has to be off your face and it has to fit inside the frame. So I showed her the picture of my daughter's hair, and her comment was, oh my God, I love her hair. I love when Black women wear their hair and it looks like buckwheat. And I just stopped and I looked at this woman like, are you serious? Like, when is there anything positive been said or expressed about buckwheat from the Little Rascals? Like, I could not even believe she said that. I didn't go any further in it. I was going to confront her later, but my other coworker was like, don't even say anything. Don't even let her know that you are on to her, so that way she can continue to speak freely, share her racist thoughts, and that way you know exactly where she stands. So that was one incident. And another quick one
30 seconds.
We were talking, well, thank you. We were talking I heard two people talking at work about the whole Starbucks situation, a Black guy talking to a non-Black Latino male and just was disparaging Black people. The Black man was. And I couldn't believe it, just whole rhetoric of, oh, they're going to lose money and it's one incident and, who can even tell that it was based on their race? So thank you for your program. All the callers that call in, I really enjoy everyone's insight and information that they share. Thank you. I'll mute my line.
Awesome to hear. First time caller. Hope the program has been constructive. Breath of fresh air. That is a metaphor. I wanted to make sure I got in my reminder, since that did sound a little bit like workplace racism. Every Thursday, neutralizing workplace racism, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I would just, with regards to anti-Blackness, because that's one that we've talked about in workplace situations pretty frequently. I would just say don't be surprised about anti-Blackness really in the context of any situation, workplace or otherwise, because whites, they have been very successful at promoting anti-Blackness and encouraging us to disparage and talk bad about one another. That don't be surprised about that. Just be prepared for it and make every effort to not engage in it ourselves. That's about the best that you can do with that, unless I'm mistaken. Other folks that we've not heard from at all, if you have a hand up, line should be open.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. Good evening, everyone. Interesting calls. I guess when someone talks about Morgan Freeman, I was just thinking, that was kind of workplace racism. Because he's given interviews and things over the years, like someone said he might have been flirty, joking, this, and I think we've talked about how you're at work, always remain serious. I worked on this movie, I like this movie, this, that, and the other. I know they're in entertainment, so they have to, quote unquote, entertain a little bit more. But this is still, you can be serious and entertaining, because it seems like those flirtations might have been jokes, are coming back to be used against him in possibly a legal manner. And to talk about the homeschooling, I think homeschooling is a good idea, but I give VGQ to the person, to the person being interviewed. I don't know if I will go around and tell white people why I choose to homeschool this, that, and the other. I would just make the decision. Tell as little people as necessary, meaning fill out the paperwork, and then maybe share those experiences with Black people and how things should go and the steps I've taken. I would try my best to share that with a Black publication, because sometimes I think we do try to explain too much to them, and they really don't care. They go, oh, that's cute, oh, that's sad, oh, I'm sorry, some platitude or whatever to make us believe that they care. And they don't. So always kind of be mindful of that. And if you do have to send your child to school, again, I'm not a parent, but I have worked in education. Make sure you as a parent and as a child know those rules, especially those discipline rules, because especially related to the high level of expulsion, suspension, I'm pretty sure a little 5-year-old and 4-year-old, in preschool won't know those rules, but to make sure you that you have access to those rules. You should be able to go into the school and say, well, what are the rules for discipline and behavior that is expected? If they don't give those rules to you, then that might be a good idea to go to the media and say, I want to try to enroll my child in a public school that serves the community, but they don't want to tell the community the rules on how they should behave to prevent such things from happening. And with that, I don't think I have anything else to say. Thank you so much for taking my call. Have a great day.
Indeed. Appreciate that. Other folks that we've not heard from at all, if we have folks who have a hand up that we've not heard from at all, feel free.
Can I be heard?
Retired firefighter.
Greetings, everyone. Yes, I have a few things here. Starting off with Mr. Steele, I thank the Creator for you to be able to be talking with us on the line. I am pretty sure that I have never experienced what you expressed, but I certainly have been countless a number of times on the side of the first responder. And I have seen a lot of what can happen to a person in an automobile accident. I was just wondering, maybe you had your seatbelt on, that may have helped. I'm not sure, but I do make a habit of telling people to, like I hear Gus stating also, is to have your seatbelt on, because I can say that I've cut a lot of people out of cars, but none of them had seatbelts on, as far as they're concerned. I mean, I'm really grateful that you're able to talk with us. I had a meeting today with a C.O.W.S. listener that he was interested in attempting to get some books into the public school system down here, and I asked him to meet me at the same facility where Mr. Clark has his meetings, his mentoring sessions, which I'm a participant in, although I don't identify myself as a mentor. But nevertheless, I come out to help out. And the meeting went pretty constructive as far as they're concerned, where Mr. Clark was informing him of how he can, a list of people that he can go to be able to attempt to get that done. Also, within the program itself, today's lesson. I mean, there's plenty of things that we do during the hours that we have the young fellows with us. But the main part of the session today was an etiquette, a person teaching something called etiquette today. And what I thought was interesting when she was mentioning about the different types of handshakes. What is a quote unquote good handshake and one that is a bad handshake. And she mentioned that, she gave one example of when a person grabs your hand and then grabs your elbow at the same time. That person is attempting to show domination on you. And of course, the first thing came to my mind was a white person, because I have seen that type of behavior with a white person. A lot of people in the session also mentioning about the as far as the president and what he does as far as handshakings are concerned as being something negative. Also, last but not least, within the session itself, there was a white person whose primary language is Spanish. That this is the second time I noticed this person was in the in the library. Basically, what he's attempting to do is to obtain some sort of political position. So he's trying to find a way to ingratiate himself with non-white black people, which is an old strategy. But in turn, what Mr. Clark is after is primarily this white male has some funds that he can certainly use. We can certainly use money from white people in our programs or whatever we have as far as they're concerned. And nevertheless, when I first came to the session and I saw him, I mentioned to Mr. Clark, I said, I'm going to try to do my best to stay out of the presence of this person so it won't interfere with you, with the money that you will be getting from this person. Lo and behold, at near the end of the session, this person actually sought me out and came up behind me and put his arm around my shoulder and on my other shoulder, squeezing my shoulder. And I said, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. Don't touch me. You know, as far I really felt I had to say that to this person. And basically, I said, well, why are you doing this? What gives you the place to he claimed he was greeting me. And I said, what gives you the place? What's the reason for the greeting? And he mentioned something about on how he assisted black males into something as a lawyer, something like that. This guy was talking about. But anyway, basically, I stated, well, that has nothing to do with what my request is, to never, ever put your hands on me, you know, as far as they're concerned. And anyway, that was just an example of something that we all know that racists do, or suspected racists do on a daily basis. And I felt I had to just inform that person that we can say hello to each other, but don't put your hands on me. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Black self-respect, retired firefighter. Cut it off. Well, I won't say it because it's a metaphor. I was going to quote Walter Beach, but sometimes you have to be direct. Retired firefighter says that all the time. We have to be direct and say exactly what it is that we want to happen in the situation, especially anything that is a safety issue, your personal space being violated in any way. Be direct, make it plain, unmistakable. Black self-respect, outstanding effort. Thank you for sharing, retired firefighter in Florida. Other folks we've not heard from at all. Do you have commentary?
Can I be heard?
Oh, yikes.
Ladies first. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is great to meet you. I had to call on another line. For some reason, I wasn't able to get through to you, but I wanted to say hello to you and the guest. I hope everyone is well. And I just had a couple of comments in regards to the clips that you were playing. As far as the school shootings and the facial recognition, it seems as if it seems like it's like Hegelian dialectic, like these incidences, they're using these school shootings as examples or excuses for them to use their facial recognition. Now all of a sudden they want to use this, they find the forum for them to use the facial recognition. And also for the school shootings, it's like they're using that as a forum for them to take away like the gun rights from gun owners' rights. Also in regards to the database setup that they had throughout the country, where the local, where they're labeling people as a threat. And then what they're doing is sending that information nationwide to different places in the country. So wherever you go, even if you move to a different part of the country, they're going to be able to recognize you because that file is going to follow you anywhere you go. So if you move to a different place, that information is going to follow you. It will go to the police stations. It will go to the different community policing agencies, all of these different agencies, and then they will be able to basically like monitor you. They can have these community watch groups that will basically monitor you. And I think I called you maybe like last week, and I was talking about, I gave you some information about that whole organized stalking and things like that, and they use these different groups to help with that whole surveillance. So I thought that this information about the database setup was basically solidifying what I was saying about how they're using this information to basically it just seems as if it's becoming more like a police state, and that everywhere you go, it's like it's just becoming like a big prison, you know, and all of this surveillance, all of this technology, all it's doing is just making things, you know, much more difficult in the prison that we're already in. And let's see. And when you were talking about how I think you were saying that Medgar Evers was being how they were stalking him, how they were harassing him, where he couldn't get sleep. And I was thinking about an incident that I had, a couple of incidences I had that I was living in an apartment, and I was a racist suspect. She lived above me, and she would do the same thing, like stomp over my head. This was like for 3 years. I could barely get sleep. It was done intentionally. I would have to go to the police department before her and everything. So I'm just saying, like, wow, that's just amazing that I had no idea that they were doing that to Medgar Evers. So it just goes to show you the extremes that they go to harass and terrorize us. And I'll mute my line.
Yes, ma'am. That was just for make sure listeners don't get confused. That was James Meredith, that they were making sure he could not rest, and it's in the documentary Ghosts of Ole Miss. Outstanding documentary. Not quite as good as Wilmington on Fire by Christopher Everett, but it's pretty good. It has a lot of constructive information, and you can hear directly, as I said, from the race soldiers who took turns bouncing a basketball to college students, not, the GED class, but college students who made shifts and took turns bouncing a basketball over the head of one black person, James Meredith, so that he couldn't sleep. Our caller, female caller in the DMV area, did you have commentary?
Yes, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the DC wife and mom. I just had a couple of observations about two of the clips. The first one being the homeschooling clip. My husband and I are not able to homeschool, but it's something that we've certainly considered doing, and something that I think that many black parents really need to consider doing. I know that it's really difficult financially. Most of us can hardly make it on two incomes. So to give up one is very challenging. So that's sort of what we struggle with now, is to get some sort of economic freedom, to be able to do that in the near future. The things that we've sort of seen as DC is really quickly gentrifying in the past 3 years or so, what we've noticed at our son's school, which has really, really become very gentrified, is the prevalence of putting black males on IEPs, which for people who don't have to deal with the school system, or maybe this is just in our area, an IEP is an individualized educational plan. And the other thing, they usually put like a behavioral component in it, so that the children, there's sort of this stigma that's kind of attached to young black boys when you do that. And really the frequency of holding black children, both black males and females, back. There's several students that have gone to school with my son who has been held back. and are now in lower grades. It seems like every year one of his classmates is being held back. And that's something that I feel like I remember when I was in school was really something that was done very infrequently, but we are seeing it a lot in his school. So really kind of over the past 3 years, as the city has started to become more and more gentrified, we've had nothing but problems at his school. One of the most recent experiences just happened actually this week when we attended his parent-teacher conference, when our son's math teacher told us that our son is doing very well. He has a very mathematical and logical mind, but he said that he's overly confident and that he has had to, on a few occasions, check him, and those were his exact words, that he's had to check him and basically like tell him he needs to pull back on. He didn't say gloating, but I'm sort of assuming that that's what he's saying, which is very unusual because I don't see my son to be a gloater at all, or somebody that would say, oh, you don't know how to do that, or anything of that kind. So it was very surprising to me, especially because I find it really quite ironic because in DC public schools, you can start your kids as soon as 3 years old. And the common practice amongst white parents is to, I think the term is redshirting. So they will hold their kids back an additional year so that their kids can start school with younger children, essentially, and be more advanced than those other kids. Forgive me if that's not the right term. I think it's a sports term, but that's what I've heard it called in the past. So I don't know. I feel like I see some sort of significance in that. The other thing I wanted to comment on was about the Bill Cosby clip. And I don't think you played anything about the Morgan Freeman situation that came up this week, but I kind of find it interesting, and this is really more of an observation, that the two Black males, with the exception of maybe R. Kelly, but both Bill Cosby and Morgan Freeman have been two Black males that in the past have had somewhat disparaging things to say about Black people and have sort of lost favor with Black people. So I find it interesting that those have been the two who are later on in their years, who, you know, may essentially not be with us much longer and have had very prolific careers and have said disparaging things about Black people almost in an attempt to target these actors who have lost favor with any sort of like base that could be of support to them. I don't know, it's something that I'm still kind of working out in my head, but it's just something that I've observed, and I was just curious if other people had observed that as well. Thank you for taking my call. I'll mute myself.
For sure. There was a male caller who spoke up simultaneously who yielded the floor. Wow. When Dr. Welsing, Grandcester, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she, I think almost every time, so that's at least 31 times on this broadcast alone, she said, when you play around with sex, the joke is on the offspring. Like, major component of people that are serious about counter-racism, like, before we get to the bedroom, we are going to have to talk about what our child's academic program is going to look like for the first 10 years of their life. Like, serious. You know, if we can't do that, if we are not finding alignment on that, then, whoa, maybe we do not need to get to the bedroom. Like, because if you don't, hey, racists, they have a well-functioning plan for your child's academic program. Well-functioning, exactly what they want. And I mean, did you hear those words? That is chilling. He was overconfident. You're a Black child. We don't want any overconfident Black children running around the nation's capital. We had enough of that with that Negro Obama here. The last, no overconfident Negroes in the nation's capital. Got to check them. And I stopped and I said, wow, because definitions, right? So I'm just looking at the word check. Stop or slow down the progress of something undesirable. They got undesirable in quotes. Efforts were made to check the disease. That's the example that they give. The next example, or the next definition, got too far down. This is one of those that has a lot of definitions, the word check. The next definition, curb or restrain a feeling or emotion. He learned to check his excitement. The next definition, hamper or neutralize an opponent. I'll stop there with the word check. That's what's happening to black male students in D.C. Again, Dr. Welsing, she talked about that a lot. That's exactly the plan that whites have. She's talked about that. That's what black boys get and black girls. Individualized education plan, IEP. That is the exact plan that they have. Not going to be confident, holding them back, restraining, hampering, neutralizing. That is the exact plan that we have for your black children. System of white supremacy. Male caller who spoke up simultaneously. Thank you for your patience. Did you want to proceed?
Absolutely. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Peace to you, Gus. Peace to all the listeners tonight. This is V from Central New York. Wow, what a show. I wanted to highlight very quickly in response to a couple of the clips that you played. Page 113 in the compensatory counter-racist code. According to compensatory logic, what are the four basic ways of teaching, telling about, and or writing about culture in order to produce the most constructive results? I'll just read the first one because I love it so much. Teach and tell the truth about what culture is. Culture is what people do. When we are considering educating our children, particularly homeschooling them, which I believe is becoming more and more in fashion, that might be a metaphor. It's becoming more and more popular and common. I think that possibly could be a mission statement for everything that we do. And then on page 235 of the same book, having to do with the opioid crises, which I had a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago, and we were talking about the opioid crises, and I made a statement about how white people have responded to the opioid crisis in relationship to how they responded to the crack epidemic. I was talking to a white person, and the person was not too pleased with the fact that I made the comparison and said, well, if it was about race, then wouldn't white people just solve this issue with the opioids and, white people would be fine? And because I made the argument that white people wanted black people on crack and wanted them to die or wanted their families fractured. And obviously they did not like the argument. But anyway, so in relationship to the opioid crisis, page 235, if racism, white supremacy was invented to benefit white people by mistreating non-white people, why do many white people suffer during the existence of white supremacy? The second paragraph, I think, is telling. Sometimes many white people who believe in practicing white supremacy also fight and kill each other when they disagree about the best ways to practice white supremacy. I would also add there that when it is beneficial financially to do such a thing. To the show, I'd like to contribute a very good article that I discovered earlier in the week called "Progressive Democrats Help Enshrine Blue Lives Matter into Law." This comes from the website Naked Capitalism. And correspondingly, there is a second article which goes into further detail on the actual law from medium.com titled "Democrats, Including Progressives, Just Voted to Declare War on Black Activists and Pipeline Fighters." This new law is chilling, which may be a metaphor, but it is very frightening. It criminalizes any act against law enforcement that is not only deemed harmful, but it's difficult to actually explain it without using legalese, but it essentially criminalizes activist activities that may result in the harm of a police officer, even though that activist isn't directly involved with it. So both of these articles should be of interest, I think, to COWS listeners, and that is all I'd like to contribute tonight. Gus, again, thank you for the tremendous work that you were doing, and later on this month, or next month actually, June, I will be making another contribution to the show. Have a good night.
Much obliged. Context of White Supremacy. Number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Yes, ma'am. I was just I'm stymied with I think he was on the Little Rascals. Wasn't he on the Little Anyway, I'm stymied with our caller in the DMV area with this instructor saying that they had to check her child. Like, that is, I mean, wow, that's like gang vernacular. Like, I had to check him, I was what was your response? And thank you for sharing. I mean, I don't have children. Make sure I get that on the record. I do not have children. That right there is a contributing factor as to why I do not have children. I guess maybe if I could maybe ask two questions. How did you respond when he said, "Yeah, I had to check your overly confident black child," and like, how did you want to respond?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, so I don't think, and thank you for reading the definitions of check, because I don't think at the time that he said it, we necessarily thought about it in that manner. He had previously said something else that had really caught us off guard, which it's relevant, but not in this context, I guess. So we were already sort of on edge with him, but I think we were still letting that sink in when he said this. So he kind of slipped this in afterward. And, and we basically, we didn't go off. Like, my husband was livid in the car when we were going home. But I have to say that these meetings are incredibly daunting, and it was something that I had read before, just even about Black parents, and particularly Black single mothers, having to attend these parent-teacher conferences, that it's sort of reliving this trauma if you didn't have a good experience in school, and then having to go there and sort of feel as though you're being judged as well. And it was basically, I think the article was talking about why Black parents aren't more involved in their children's education. And so it was sort of getting onto that, but I'm sorry, I'm getting away from what you asked. So we were sort of taken aback. We did tell him that he's very intelligent. Our son is very intelligent. Neither my husband or I are very mathematically inclined, so we are very proud of the fact that he is, and we encourage him a great deal to be very, very good at math, especially because of the logical component to it. And so we feel as though that will help him in terms of giving him a code to have that logical mind and to think logically like that. So we expressed to him that we don't ever tell him that he shouldn't be smart or that he shouldn't be proud of his accomplishments, because he works very, very hard. And I should also say, I don't think I stated this, our son is 8 years old. So it's not as though he's in middle school or he's a second grader. So this was him telling a second grader, or telling us that he's telling our second grader that he had to check him. But we didn't handle it the way, of course, hindsight's 2020. We absolutely did not handle it the way that we would have liked. As I think you say, or Neely Fuller Jr. says, that you'll always be given another opportunity to practice again. I'm sure we will have another situation next year, if not even in the remainder of this school year. So we didn't handle it the way that we wanted to. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult. It's really difficult because you don't know at that moment how to handle the situation. And, so we tried to continue to reinforce. And then when we came home and we spoke to our son about it, we told him, absolutely, you never, ever be scared to shine. You never shy away from being proud of the fact that you are intelligent, that you're good at math, that so we tried to reinforce that and basically telling him that that's absolutely ludicrous what your teacher is saying, or that, if your teacher is pulling you back or holding you back, that's ludicrous, and don't listen to any of that. So, yeah.
Context of White Supremacy. You said this was a white male teacher?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Did you, when you were explaining how ludicrous all this was, did you explain to him that this white man was practicing racism?
We talk about it so frequently with him that I don't know if those were the exact same words. I mean, we tend to use racism, white supremacy in our language with him. So we may have said something like that, not explicitly just racism, but we explained to him that this is how, white people are. This is what they do. They don't have much, many expectations for you, and that they want to prevent you from excelling. So yes, we absolutely did express to him that this is racist behavior, and but like I said, probably not that exact language, but yes, we did express that to him.
Right on. Thank you for indulging me with the questions about something that's really, in my opinion, a super traumatic experience to go through for everybody, for you and your child. You said your partner was really upset about it, and rightfully so. I would have been upset. There's Ivy. I think she's with us. I would have been angry as well if I had been involved in the situation. Thank you for sharing. As I've said many, many times over the years, I know that's not the sort of thing that I cannot wait. I am excited to call in and talk about this, parent-teacher meeting and tell, the whole world about what happened. But I mean, I think that sort of thing is critical, again, just to emphasize this is what, you can look forward to a good 20 years of or hey, if you do any collegiate academic work, 25 years, this is what you have to look forward to. Really make sure that you take that seriously. And if you are going to have children, if you're going to procreate, before you get to the bedroom, extensive dialogue, because this is what you can expect for your Black boys and girls. Again, thank you so much for sharing. The female caller. Thank you for your patience, ma'am. Thank you for indulging me. Did you want to proceed?
Yes. Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for taking my call. Greetings to you, Gus, the callers, and the listeners. I also wanted to comment on a homeschool experience an experience that I had that forced me and my husband to homeschool our daughter for the last 3 years. She was in kindergarten, and a little white young boy, she was laughing, and he tried to put his hand up her skirt. And when she came home and told me and my husband, of course, we told her next time, give him exactly what he needs and don't stop. Take all the way off on him. And so when she went back to school the next day, she explained to him, my parents told me if anyone touches me to hit them. And so the teacher tells her she'll be expelled from school. And so, again, during that day, I had already contacted the teacher and asked her to schedule a meeting with myself and the principal so that we could schedule a meeting with this child's parents. She explained to me that she would have the principal call me before the end of the day. So all of this transpired with them telling my daughter she would be expelled if she tried to protect her personal space. Come the end of the school day, I still haven't gotten a call back from the teacher, still have not received a call from the principal, so we show up at the school and just impromptu have a meeting with the principal. She explains, he's just a flailer. He didn't mean anything by it. He was just flailing around. And so I said, well, my daughter felt violated enough to come and explain that to me. So obviously something was wrong in that situation. And she's like, oh, no, he's just fine. Oh, I've known him for years. Well, he's only in kindergarten. How long could you really know him? And you're the principal. How could you really know him on a personal level? But I digress on that point. So she goes on to further try to cover up for him. And then when my husband motions in a flailing gesture towards her, she nearly fell out of her chair. She could not compose herself. And then her story changed. And she said, oh, yes, you have every right to protect your personal space. And, that was not right. And if you felt violated, you have every right to come and let the teacher know. And, we will not let that type of behavior go on in the school. And so by this time, her teacher was walking in. And, of course, she has this surprised look on her face to see us having a meeting with the principal. And she's like, oh, I was just getting ready to call you guys. School is out. So when exactly were you going to call us? At the end of the day, we explained to them she will not be returning to the school. There was maybe a week and a half of school left. She will not be returning. And since then, we have been homeschooling her for the past 3 years. It has been amazing. She has her own, she's not limited. Her creativity has grown so much. We don't have to worry about the minute things that she'll have to face with teachers trying to degrade her. At one point, her teacher would have her repeat the same worksheet because she would be one of the first students to finish. And so it was after that one school year experience, that was enough. And I just want to encourage many other parents out there to homeschool your children because it's really the best thing that you can do for them. You have so much control over the things they learn. You have so much control over the things they experience. You have so much control over how their mind is being shaped because that's one thing that these suspected racists do. They try to shape our children's minds to be exactly what they expect them to be, a statistic. And we have to start by changing that. We have to be the first ones to take that step in changing that by homeschooling our children if we're able to. It's not easy now. It's not easy by any means, but if you really want to do it, there's a way. And sometimes we even include weekends. I mean, you have to get creative with it, and you have to come up with a creative schedule, but you can definitely make it work. And I'll mute my line. Thanks for taking my call.
Spectacular. Thank you so much for sharing, and that is outstanding. That is definitely worthy of a high commendation, your efforts to homeschool you and everyone in your family that's involved in making that happen. Again, thank you for sharing. That is spectacular. Encourage other Black parents to be creative, as she stated, be creative, make it happen. I know other Black parents who've done the same. And I guess if I could encourage anything, try to make sure that you don't wait until something like that happens to force you to make that decision. Try to say, hey, this sort of thing is going to happen. I am going to be preemptive, as the great George W. Bush used to say. I'm going to be preemptive. I am going to make a decision before this happens. Because why? And I was so glad I was muted when you were sharing that anecdote, your husband, when the flailing and she took so long to compose herself. A Black male flailing in the office with a white woman, like, wow. Security could have been called. Officer Slam could have been on the scene. He could have been tased. System of white supremacy, like those sort of situations I was even thinking for that facial recognition, like they'll probably have lots of Black parents' faces where they have been banned and they are no longer allowed on school premises because they do that a lot too. Anyway, Imhan DC, did you have commentary that you wanted to share? You should be with us, sir. Imhan DC.
Yes, sir. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Greetings to you, the host, the callers, and the listeners. I was just going to ask if anybody, just in general, anybody listening, has anybody solved the problem? Does anybody know how to end white supremacy by the end of this year? or even if we could do it by tomorrow, that'd be awesome. But
nope.
Does anybody know how to do it by the end of this year?
Nope.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
If anyone gets that answer, if you could share it immediately, that would be great. Or better yet, you can just implement. You don't even have to share. You can just implement and get the problem solved. That would be best. You don't even have to share. Implement. Ivy, if you had commentary, proceed.
Greetings, Gus. Greetings to all the callers on the line. I just wanted to quickly say that I hear a lot of people saying opioid crisis and crack epidemic. Crack is a street name, but for opioids, we don't use street name. We say opioids. We don't say dog food. And we say crisis for the opioid, but with the crack, we say epidemic. So I think that the way things are talked about is huge in white supremacy. And when black people are alleged to be the perpetrators of something, it's talked about very differently and talked about as, vile and all of that, and criminal. But when white people are doing it, it's talked about differently. So it's a crisis that they're dying, and it's an epidemic that we are. So I just think that it should be talked about in the same way, and there should be consistency, that if you're going to say opioid crisis, you should say cocaine crisis, and if you're going to say crack epidemic, you should say dog food epidemic. The other quick thing that I was going to say is that I do notice the same pattern, that the white supremacists seem to be going at people who have fallen out of favor with black people. And I think that they've been actually setting up R. Kelly for a long time. And I'm hearing a lot of people talk about how he's so guilty and things like that. And they're using, other black people like Charlemagne the God and some people who are alleged to be black. And by that I mean on these black targeted websites that are white owned, but may have black writers talking about how R. Kelly is so guilty and things of that nature. So, if they happen to get him with some charges or whatnot, I'm not sure if black people will actually vote guilty for him. I mean, that may happen, but I'm starting to hear even a whole lot of conversation about his guilt and just talking very negatively about him. And that's all I had. Thanks, Gus. Thanks, everyone. I'll mute my line.
Spectacular. Is there anybody that we missed completely? Anybody who did not get to speak at all who has a hand up? We didn't miss anyone. We got everybody who has a hand up. Spectacular. Spectacular. Thank you, everyone, for dialing in to share. Make sure I emphasize, I do not have children. I am never criticizing, judging any black parents for their response to the system of white supremacy. If anybody has done a poor job and should be judged harshly for their counter-racist or failure at counter-racist parenting, it would be Gus T, because I have been overwhelmed by the whole even thought of having to engage in that behavior for the next, as I stated, 2-3 decades. So certainly I'm never in a state of judgment, just asking questions, trying to get a better understanding, and just following logic with regards to how racism, white supremacy operates in education. And as I stated, racists, they have a very efficiently operating system plan for your black boys and black girls to check them. Sounds like the the female caller that we heard from last when she was talking about what prompted she and her family to start homeschooling her child. Perhaps that's what was going on there as well, checking her daughter. Let her know she's going to be expelled for protecting her personal space. I guess there's a lot of checking of black students that goes on in these schools. With that, we will conclude. We will be here, I believe, on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. You can check the Black Talk Radio Network page. You can also check the Facebook page, facebook.com/RWSWJ. If you have questions that have nothing to do with the cow shirt, guest suggestions, archive questions. If you are confused about something, you have a gripe, untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. If you have questions or would like to purchase a shirt, email cowsshirt@gmail.com, COWS shirt, SHIRT@gmail.com. Trav will take excellent care of you. End of the week, if you could contact him immediately, really, and give him an idea if you want to make a shirt, get all that coordinated by the end of the week so he can make the order, and folks should have their shirt in time for, I would say, June. Sometime in June, shirts should be here. With that, thank you everyone for participating. I hope it was a constructive investment of your Saturday evening. Again, we'll be back on Wednesday. My suggestion, sobriety would be best. I know the weather is getting great. It's graduation time and folks want to go out and have a good time. Grand. Do so. I hope I can engage in some fun in the sun myself. However, you still want to be codified, and in my view, sobriety would be best under conditions of white terrorism. I think we heard dialogue today on this broadcast about substance abuse in a myriad of ways. And in fact, I have to pause. That was such an important point that Ivy brought up about words. Just the definition of epidemic, since it's crack epidemic, the definition of epidemic is a widespread occurrence of an infectious disease in a community at a particular time. So black people have a crack disease. Crisis, on the other hand, a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. That is a substantial difference in language and how these two problems are being talked about, where white people are just having an intense difficulty, whereas black people have a crack disease. Are you serious? Like, yeah, that term should never be used again. Crack epidemic, like permanently retired. Great point, Ivy. We will wrap there. And again, sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. All of their poisons. You can let them do that and kill off all the shellfish and everything else on the planet using all of the poisons that they want. Preserve our brain computers, get quality rest, take excellent care of our brain computers and our overall health as best we can so that we can solve this problem immediately, as soon as possible. Along with sobriety, each and every time we're in a vehicle, let's buckle up. Let's do everything we can to minimize contact with race soldiers, badge or no. That's it. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. Man, I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.